Welcome to Rogue Bogues, my journey. It's going to be episode 4, University of Utah, freshman year. A lot to get through. This one will go for a little while. We've got a few guests that are going to join us along the way. So let's get rogue. So we start off the start of this podcast basically by filling a few blanks from episode 3. So in episode 3, I spoke about flying back to Australia, getting my visa, and then going to the University of Utah. One tidbit that I forgot to mention was when I was in Europe after the World Under-19 Championships, won a gold medal, was MVP, played really well, kind of name was on the map around the world as the next big thing from the junior level. When I had gone to Croatia for a holiday with my family, I was approached by 3 or 4 European clubs. 2 of them were serious. One of them was Tabona Zagreb, former club of Drazen Petrovic. So I was well familiar with them as I was a big fan of Drazen's and everyone kind of knows that. And it was well publicized. So there was Tabona and then there was, I think, Panathinaikos was the next biggest offer. They were both around about $1 million USD a year. So I'd gone and met with Tabona at a fancy hotel there in Zagreb, Croatia. They basically tried to schmooze me and played on everything they could. They had me meet Drazen Petrovic's mother. They had me go to the museum that they had for Drazen at the time, which was right next to their arena. They tried to hit some chords with me to try and get me to sign there. And look, I gave it some thought. I never really seriously considered it, but you see a bunch of zeros on paper, more than I ever thought I'd have in my lifetime. And, you give it a bit of thought, obviously. And it was tough to turn down in the sense of it's a lot of money that I never thought I'd have a chance to make. But thankfully I had, good people around me, a good family, and was consulted that basically the money will come. Be patient and everything will come. And the other thing was I gave my word to the University of Utah. I gave my word that I'd come and play there, whether it be a year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever. And that meant a lot to me as well. I don't like being a person that gives my word on something or doing something for somebody or whatever it is and then not fulfilling that. That bothers me a little bit. So that was just part of my psyche and it kind of always has been. If I say I'm going to do something, I would generally do it. So that was basically as I left Croatia, I had that offer flying back and never really gave it much thought after that. It came up a little bit down the line, which you'll hear about on this episode. But yeah, just a small little tidbit, 18-year-old kid, a 19-year-old kid getting $1 million offer to go somewhere and turning it down. They were pretty distraught about it. They thought they had me. They thought they struck a chord and hit the emotional side of things. And then, the other thing with European offers that I learned early and the agent I had at the time kind of somewhat told me was a lot of times they weren't worth the paper they were written on. You might have $1 million USD deal and you start the season 3-10 and you're having a horrible year. You might get half of that. You might not get all of it. Monday morning comes, they've missed your paycheck hasn't hit your account. And Shane Heal used to tell a funny story about when he played in Greece. He played for a cellar dwelling team, I believe, that were close to relegation. I'm not sure how that all finished, but he remembers going into the office of the GM and saying, "Mate, I didn't get my pay. It didn't come through." And he'd say, "Avrio," which meant, I believe in Greek, it means tomorrow. And he'd then go in on Tuesday and get Avrio. He got to a point where it was like, I'm just not even going to go in there. But almost every time his paycheck was due, it was late and severely late and he'd never get it on time. And that was the other thing. Like I knew if I sign for $1 million, I'm probably going to get 500 of it no matter what. And then the rest will be kind of you're hoping you get. And I've got a lot of stories from teammates of mine from Australia that have played in Europe that the contract, wasn't worth the piece of paper it was written on at times. Those numbers never eventuated that way. I had a teammate that his club went bankrupt mid-season, so those things happen. And that also put my mind at ease a little bit about rejecting that offer. So anyway, we get to Australia, jump on the plane, go to the University of Utah. I touch on at the end of episode 3 about coming down the escalators at Salt Lake International Airport, Salt Lake City, and not knowing who I'm meeting, not knowing what they look like. Never met them before in my life. See the coach, University of Utah jacket. That must be my guy. Say hello to him. It was Scott Garson, a video coach at the time of the University of Utah. He basically drives me back to the dorms. I think I landed at night, so couldn't really go out and meet people and get taken to the dorm straight away. And the way the dorms worked were I had a roommate that was one big room, myself and another guy. His name was Ryan Wirch. and he was my roommate. He was from Wisconsin. And then the room next door to us was, I believe, Justin Hawkins and Stefan Zimmerman, two other freshmen. So it was 2 rooms within a big room and then a shared bathroom for all of us. And that was kind of the living quarters. And the good thing about the dorms were they were pretty new because they were built for the 2002 Winter Olympics, which were in Salt Lake. So we had a pretty nice dormitory, but you don't have your own room. You don't have kind of your own little perks and privacy. So that was a bit of an adjustment. But that was kind of my first foray into meeting my teammates. And they'd already been there for 3, 4, 5, 6, weeks because I'd had the World Championship. So I didn't get there early in summer school and do all that like most of them did. So I kind of had to settle in and get used to things very, very quickly. But anyhow, training basically started off pretty easy. The NCAA rules permitted back then you could only do 2 hours of on-court sessions per week leading into the official start date of the season. So once the start date starts, I think it was sometime in September, October, then you can do your regular team sessions. I think it was 20 hours a week max on court. So you could only do 2. So it was basically broken up by 40-minute sessions. And I don't believe you could have more than 4 or 5 people in your session with that particular coach. Then what would usually happen is after those sessions, we'd all meet on one court and play 5-on-5. No coaches were meant to be there, but we knew they were recording the sessions. They'd watch the sessions later, all that kind of stuff. So it was basically open gym, 5-on-5. We'd also have 4 weight sessions a week, which were, quote, optional, unquote. So legally, we didn't have to do them as per NCAA rules because you can only do 2 hours of structured sessions. But if you didn't show up to those things, you're getting a call from a coach and getting cussed out. So we kind of, did all that, which was fine. The weight sessions were interesting because we were becoming a big football school at the time when I got there. We were known as a basketball school, but that kind of needle has turned where they're just as good in football now. And a lot of our weight sessions were just straight up meathead type football lifts. That's changed a lot now in basketball where people have finally figured out that, a linebacker or whoever it is, a football player shouldn't be having the same lift as a basketball player and vice versa. And we don't need to be doing max bench press every session and trying to squat the whole gym. We need to be strong. We need to be lean. We need to be quick. And I think that wiry strength that we're seeing now, that's your prototypical basketball player, in my opinion. So they were crazy. They were, it was that whole, whenever someone was doing a personal best lift, there'd be the weight coach would get a metal bar and bang it against the cage and yell and scream, and everyone would have to huddle around, which was okay in a way, but it was real meatheady. It was kind of more football orientated. So I always got a kick out of that, especially later on in my career once I figured out what worked for my body and what didn't. And obviously for a 7-footer doing back squats with a loaded bar of 100, 200 kilos is not the smartest thing to do because my technique is just not ever going to be as good as a guy at 6'1". I've got a lot of long limbs, and it's just something's going to go wrong on the way. And holes been known to end up having back issues later in my career. So I'm not blaming anyone for that, but it's just it all coincides with, like I said, I think basketball's changed as far as doing lifts predicated for what kind of athlete you're aiming to build up. But class was pretty easy for me. Funnily enough, they had a thing called a GPA for all the Australian followers, grade point average. It was a 2.0. Was needed to maintain eligibility back then. A 2.0 would be a C equivalent. So a 4.0 is the best you can get. That's the smartest guy in the class. 4.0, 3.0 is a B. 2.0 would be C-ish, and then you go below that. But the NCAA had a rule: if you didn't maintain a 2.0 throughout the season, you could be deemed ineligible to play in games. So what they would usually do is I had a teammate that got under it a little bit, and he fell to like a 1.8, and then they give you a couple of weeks to get it back above, meaning doing extra study, making sure you're handing all your stuff in on time, and then you'd be able to play. But if you fell under it for a long period of time, more than a couple of weeks, you'd be ineligible to play in the games. You could still train, still go to class. You just couldn't play in the games until that GPA went back above. And I guess the reason they put that in is a lot of schools recruit players and then just kind of, they know they're not going to class and they didn't really care. And they knew they'd be there for a year or two and then get drafted in the NFL or the NBA. So that kind of somewhat put a stop to that. There's still ways to cheat it, but that put a stop to that. But my GPA was fantastic my first year. It was first semester. It was a 3.1, which is a BB plus. And it was funny because of the issue I had that I spoke about in episode 3 about coming over to University of Utah, where I got deemed ineligible by the NCAA. It wasn't a grade issue. It was a credit issue. I didn't have enough credits in a certain field of science that they just deemed my transcripts ineligible. So these coaches in the States thought I was a dumbass. So I would have class checks, which they kind of did for most freshmen, but they made sure they were checking on me. We can't afford to have this guy not have a 2.0 or higher. We can't afford him ineligible. And not only that, Coach Majerus would kick their ass if it happened. So I was getting class checks the whole first semester. And then I get my GPA, get my report, and half the coaches are like, man, you did really well in school. I'm like, I didn't really put that much effort in, to be quite honest with you. I just find it very, very easy. And I handed in everything. I was there on time and did what I had to do. And second semester, because I'd got that 3.1, I didn't have to do study hall anymore. So that first semester, freshman, was mandatory. You had to do study hall, which was 4 sessions a week at about 7 o'clock at night till about 9, about 2 hours-ish. You come in, you had access to advisors. I mean, they try to do everything they can for the athletes to make sure, you're on a scholarship. The last thing we need is for you not to be able to play because of academics. So they try to help as much as you could. So the second semester, I didn't have to do any of that. I stopped getting the class checks unless I was with a teammate that was getting class checked. So if I had a class with a teammate and he was getting class checked, then they'd be like, where's Bogues? Why isn't he here? So I knew kind of strategically which classes to go to no matter what. And then I'd miss classes a fair bit. Like I'd probably miss 1 out of 4 classes. So I'd go to 75% of classes, and I had no issue. I'd just make sure that I wasn't a dumbass about it. I'd go there whenever we had a quiz in the curriculum, whenever we had a test, whenever we had group projects, whenever we had projects, anything due, I was always there. And I'd go to a few other classes. But for the most part, I'd if I needed to sleep in or if I needed some extra time to do some other things, I just wouldn't go to class. And I still managed to get kept it at a 3.1. So I found school easy compared to Australia. Australian high school, year 10, 11, which is the third last year and the second last year of high school. We finished in year 12 in Australia. I felt like freshman year in college was equivalent to year 10, year 11 as far as how hard it was. So I kind of cruised through that. I had no real issues with school the whole time, passed with kind of flying colors. And that was basically it as far as school went. I did a pre-business degree, so pretty easy stuff. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just ended up picking pre-business, and it actually worked out well. But I wish I would have applied myself even more, considering the path I'm taking off the court with different business things. But I caught up on all that with my own self-study. Halfway through first semester, I go and I get to move dorm rooms. So I was suffering from chronic migraines, which a lot of people that have followed my career would know. I missed not a lot of NBA games. I've probably missed maybe 5 or 6 NBA games completely due to migraines. And for all the people out there who think a migraine is a headache, it is not. And for the people that think, well, I went to work, I had a headache all day yesterday, I still went to work, it's completely different. For me, I used to get these chronic things. I still do get them to this day. They're a bit more, they're not as frequent anymore. So by the frequency, when I was younger, I'd get 1 a month almost. Now I'm down to, maybe 5 or 6 a year, which is good, but basically shuts down your body, lose vision, lose feeling in part of my body, hands and that kind of stuff, and start throwing up violently. And when I was younger, they'd last 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. And now they kind of ease up a bit quicker. But anyway, long story short, with all that stuff, I won't bore you with it. I ended up having to get my own room because I got a few migraines, and I'm basically telling my roommate to shut up, and he's trying to study with the light on or making noise, and I kind of felt bad. And he's just trying to study and do what he's got to do in the room, but I'm in a position where I need absolute quiet and peace and quiet and dark room and all that kind of stuff. So it just didn't work out. I got a couple of migraines early on, and then basically went to the coaches and was like, look, I need my own room. Like, I can't do this. If I get sick, I need to go to a quiet place. And they ended up finding me my own room towards the end of that first semester, which was in a whole different building from where I was. So I was moved away from there. I move into an apartment where there's 4 bedrooms. So there's 2 wings, 2 bedrooms on each wing. We all get our own bedroom, lounge room in the middle, and then each set of 2 bedrooms on their wing have their own bathroom. So 2 bathrooms, 4 bedrooms, basic apartment. And I have 3 random people as roommates that I've never met before. So 2 of them were these Asian kids from San Jose, the Bay Area, actually, funnily enough. Goes full circle. I still talk to one of those guys to this day. He's a massive Warriors fan, funnily enough. And they were awesome. They were laid back kids. They basically, all they did was get high as fuck, smoke weed, study their ass off and play video games. That was it. Nothing else. And I assume that, they all graduated and did very well in school, but they come back from class, study, and then they'd be high the rest of the day. So sometimes I'd just chill in the lounge room with them, making sure I didn't get any secondhand smoke, of course, but I'd stay with them and just chill out and talk shit with them. And they were pretty cool to hang out with. So that was all good and fun. The third roommate kind of didn't hang with us at all, really. He was kind of a hermit. He'd stay in his room, wouldn't really come out much. You'd see him every now and then. He was a big gamer. So he'd play those, a lot of shooting games, Counter-Strike and all that back then, I believe, online gaming. He'd play, 10, 12-hour marathons. Wouldn't come out of his room. The reason why I know is because my wall was against his desk. Where my bed was, that wall was against his study desk where his computer was. So all I would hear is machine gun fire, like till 2, 3, 4 in the morning sometimes. he had the speaker on the floor and all that kind of stuff. So once a week I'd have to go in there and be like, dude, like, can you turn the shooting down, man? Like I got weights at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. I need to sleep. So I had no issue with him, but I had to get into it with him a few times. And after like the third or fourth week, started getting a bit more fired up every time I had to go in there. And that was just something you dealt with. But an interesting story that came with that was I guess we had a roommate's friend come over from a different dorm room. And I guess that something had happened between that kid and the kid next door to me. And I don't know, there was some back and forth as he was walking out of his room. We were sitting in the lounge room. Just nothing serious, a bit of back and forth. And I guess he said something as he was walking out, and as he walked out of the door of the lounge room into the hallway, it's those self-closing doors, right? The heavy fire doors that close by themselves, and you know. So as that door was closing, the door clicked shut. This dude, the friend of one of my roommates, he throws his set of keys kind of at the door, like, man, get the F out of here, you know, just like, I don't know, trying to be funny, you know, just that kind of reactive, whatever. So the keys make a big clunk on the door. So obviously the kid that was walking out, he would have heard as he's in the hallway something hit the door, right? So the kid comes back maybe 20 minutes later. I don't know where he went. Maybe went to get some food or whatever. He walks in. The keys were still on the floor. On the key ring, there's a decent sized pocket knife, you know, something that's probably 8-9 centimeters. You know, your standard little pocket knife that has a bottle opener, a little blade, a nail file, one of those ones, right? Swiss Army knife, whatever it's called. So I guess this kid's like sees that, goes to his room, comes back out again. Keys are still there. Like we still haven't picked them up. We're still sitting there playing. I think we're playing Xbox at the time or PlayStation. He walks back out of the room. So then about, I don't know, maybe 15, 20, 25 minutes later, we're still sitting there, haven't moved. We hear like boom, 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 boom on the door, on the apartment door, which is as soon as you open it, it goes right into the lounge room. So we're like, what the hell's going on? We don't jump up quickly. We're like, what the hell's going on? Something's strange. And within 3 or 4 seconds of that, the door barges open and it's police, guns out, guns drawn, pointed right at us. And they start yelling, put down the knife, put down the knife. Now, what are you guys talking about? No one's got a knife. No one's got a knife here. Put down the knife. Just shut up. Listen, put your hands up in the air, blah, 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 blah. So we're like, you know, I've never had a gun pulled on me. Never really felt a gun. My grandfather had a rifle back in the day until that got taken off all Australian citizens when they had the recall in the 90s. But I was young at that point, never really handled a gun. So I'm staring down the barrel of a gun and you're like, man, what the hell is going on here? So we end up talking to the police, and they then see the keys and the pocket knife on the floor. Whose is this? And the guy goes, oh, it's mine. It's like, well, we've got reports that someone's tried to, you know, someone's got a knife and making threats and blah, 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 blah. So I guess this kid's called the police and said, you know, they've attempted to throw a knife at me or stab me or whatever. I don't know what the hell he said, because the cops came in there, guns drawn, and that was my kind of first welcome to that apartment building, and it was pretty scary. Like I'm not going to lie to you, I've never had a gun pointed at me, and you know we all know that cops are on edge as it is over there in the US with everything going on. So back then that was a pretty scary time, but an interesting story nonetheless. Something that was kind of a welcome to college, I guess. I ended up buying a bicycle. That was my mode of transport at the University of Utah. There was a bus network, but I kind of took that when I could. There was a tram network if you wanted to go to the city. To be honest, I hardly ever left the campus. So I bought this bike from, I don't know, Walmart or something, a couple $100, $150, and that was my mode of transportation. And so one day my route to the Huntsman Center, the University of Utah campus, by the way, is at the top of a hill from downtown. So you think downtown, you go up this hill, and at the top of that is the university, the massive campus. So beautiful part of the world. Not just Salt Lake City in America, but fantastic place. It was a blessing to be able to go to class every day and look down upon the city, and you're in a valley and you see mountains, and it was really, really nice. And once I'd left there, I'd realized how much I missed seeing mountains, but you don't realize it when you're in it, right? But so my route to school would be basically down a hill from the dormitories on a main road, and then turn into the parking lot of the arena, the Huntsman Center. So I fly down the hill. We drive on the right side of the road in the US. So I'm riding my bike. I get to that main road and I have to kind of cross to the traffic light, turn right, and then I have to turn left to go into the parking lot of the arena. So then I have to kind of go on the left turning lane, and then I'm waiting. So there's 2 lanes there, and traffic's basically backed up from that traffic light. So they're kind of waving me through because they just backed up on my bike. The 3rd lane is a turn lane to go into the Huntsman Center. So it's not to go anywhere else but right. But once you pass kind of the Huntsman Center, that lane then becomes a lane to turn at the traffic light down the road, but it's not meant to be a third lane to drive straight through. So anyhow, I get to the intersection and there's two cars in both those lanes that can go straight, and they're waving me through. Go ahead, mate, go ahead. So I start pedaling, get on my bike and pedaling that third lane. A car goes straight through that lane instead of turning into the parking lot and just T-bones me on a bicycle. I don't know how I didn't end up in hospital. I don't know how I came out of it with some scratches and gashes on my right leg that was on the side of the car. I saw the car at the last minute, and as I got hit, I kind of jumped with the bike, if that makes sense. So I kind of absorbed the blow and then landed back on the bike standing up. The bike had been basically destroyed. The wheel, I think it was my rear wheel, had been completely bent, so it was like facing the ground, so it wouldn't even spin. It's parallel with the ground, and the rim was. And so I basically just picked up the bike, chucked it over my shoulder, pissed off, like looking at the car, like, man, what the hell? Walk into the parking lot. I saw a couple of cars pull in and say, you need to exchange details, like the guy hit you, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Not a big deal. The guy gets out of his car. I think it was a lady actually, and she exchanges details with me, and I end up getting to practice. Some of the coaches kind of saw what happened, asked what happened. I said, I was hit by a car. I don't have any way to get home because my bike's screwed up. I need a ride later. And then, Rick Majerus comes up to me, the coach, and he's like, do you want us to sue him for you? We can sue him. And I'm like, man, it's not a big deal. Like, it was an accident, and I didn't want any money from the guy. I was just like, just give me a new bike, man. Like, that's all I care about. Just give me a new bike and I'll get on my way. So the lady's husband ended up buying me a bike, a couple $100, and that was the end of that. But it was a real close call of being in some serious trouble and having a serious injury basically before the season even started. So I kind of stopped riding after that, at least on the road. I'd just stay on the paths, but then it started snowing. So that was a bit of a hazard as far as getting around campus. I come off the bike a few times on ice, and I'd come off my feet a few times on ice. I never dealt with snow before, so didn't realize there's times where you're just walking and you hit some black ice that you can't really see, and you just fall over, and everyone's laughing at you. And that's just how you figure out quickly that you need, number one, some good shoes, some grip, and number two, you got to be vigilant where the hell you're walking when it's snowing. So that all ended up going that way. My second semester, I ended up buying a car off a teammate. I had received some money from my grandmother, who had received a settlement from Croatia from, if you listen to episode 1, you'd know my family tree, and my grandfather that had divorced my grandma and moved back to Croatia. They had some land over there, finally sold it 10 years on and got a settlement. And my grandmother had basically given it to my mom, of course, my auntie, her daughter, and then the grandkids, which was myself and my sister. I ended up getting, I think, roughly $4, $5, $6,000. I think it was about $6,000 Aussie. Now, back then, the exchange rate was terrible. So someone sends 100 Australian, it was 50 cents to the dollar. So you get $50 for that in the States. So the Aussie dollar didn't go far. So even when my parents tried to help and send some money, it really didn't go too far. So the money from my grandma helped. I now had enough to buy a car. So I bought a Pontiac Grand Am, purple, deep purple color. Still remember it to this day. I love that car. It was a 1994, 95 model. Teammate of mine, Nick Jacobson, gave it to me, sold it to me because he had another car. And that was kind of my get around. I think it cost me $2,500, but I didn't then realize had to get insurance, had to get this registration. So by the time he did all that, all my grandma's money and some was gone. So that was kind of how I cruised around campus. I thought I was a man in that car. It was a piece of shit, but when I had it, I thought it was the best thing ever. I ended up putting, the following year, I bought some wheels for it and got the windows tinted, and yeah, I thought I was gangster in that. But it made me learn how to drive, because a front wheel drive car in the snow, it wasn't an all wheel drive. That was alarm bells the first time I drove in snow. Never driven in snow before, but I had to learn. The funny story about the car was once I received the car, I didn't have a license. I had no US license. Matter of fact, I didn't have an Australian license. I had a learner permit still. So I'd buy the car. Like all things in life that I've done, I kind of get the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken, however you want to word it. But I go to my coaches, I'm like, I don't have my license. So one of the assistant coaches, Kerry Rupp, he was a high school coach in Utah before he came to the University of Utah as an assistant coach. So he's like, look, I'm good friends with the driving instructor there. We'll get you a driving test. Can you drive? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm fine. I can drive. Like, never driven in America before, like at all. Never driven a car, other side of the road, different laws. So I get the little book. Literally spend 20 minutes reading it before I go for my driving test, actual physical driving test. So I'm like, I go for the driving test, pass, no issue. The only thing that kind of gets me, and still does to this day in America, is if four people show up to an intersection with stop signs at the same time, I still have no idea who goes first. So I'd either go aggressively or I'd wave someone else through, but that's kind of something I still have a problem with to this day. So I passed that test. I do the written test. I just passed it. You had to get 80%, and I was like 81% or whatever it was. Get on my paperwork, and they're like, "Oh, you need someone now to drive you down to the DMV or the licensing and registration office. Drive you down there. They do all your documentation. They tick you off, take the photo, and then you can drive after that, and you'll get your license in the mail." So I'm like, okay. So I leave there. I'm like, well, I have no one to take me down there. So I'm like, okay, cool. Got a car. So I drive myself down to get my license without a license, come down there, do all my paperwork, and they're like, okay, you got your license. Just get someone to pick you up from the licensing division, and you're good to go home. I'm like, yeah, no worries. Just walk out the door, jump in my car, and drive back. And it was something stupid that I did at the time. Probably shouldn't have done it, but that was just kind of fit in with my life and the shit that I used to do. It wasn't a big deal to me, and I just made sure I was cautious when I was driving. I had no insurance at that time, and I think I still had registration from my teammate, thankfully. So got away with that, and then had a car to get around, had a license, and thought I was the man. So one other thing, I didn't really party too much my freshman year. You hear all these college stories. I went to a few parties here and there, but it wasn't a weekly occurrence. Went to a few frat parties, which were like the movies. Got in a fight with a frat house one time, which was interesting. Had to almost James Bond ourselves out of their house. A word of advice would be, don't start a fight with a frat bro inside a frat bro's house, because it's pretty tricky getting out. But we ended up getting out of there unscathed, and then had a whole house chasing us down the street. So that was funny. I had a girlfriend at the time in Canberra, funnily enough, when I came from my freshman year, and tried to do the long distance thing. Shocker, it didn't work, but it was more from her end. Funnily enough, I kept low key. I didn't really go out too much, especially when I had the girlfriend. But it was hard to maintain a relationship long distance back then. Today's much easier with FaceTime and all that. Back then, even a phone call would cost me $4 or $5 a minute. The only time I could really catch her would be on MSN Messenger. The time difference was killer because she worked during the day, so that obviously didn't last. I'd try to sneak into the coach's offices sometimes, and they'd when they weren't looking, and call overseas and just have a quick chat to her on a mobile, and that cost them probably $50 for the 5 minutes I spent on it. But that was interesting. It ended up getting cut short by her. I guess she had a few girlfriends in her ear at the time saying, what do you think he's doing over there? This, that. So that ended. So moving on, you would have noticed that I haven't touched on much basketball stuff, and that was strategically done just to get the off-court stuff out of the way for the most part. We'll touch on a little bit more of it down the track. But now we get to the fun stuff, the basketball, and the really fun stuff, and where shit gets real, Coach Rick Majerus. So I had signed with the University of Utah not to go to the University of Utah. I signed with the University of Utah to be coached by Rick Majerus. So that's the first thing. That's very important. So we'll rewind it back a little bit just to set the scene of when I was recruited by the University of Utah. Coach Rick Majerus had flown out to Australia, finally, had not really met him, not really spoke to him on the phone. Everything was kind of delegated to the assistant coaches. He flies out to watch a game out in Bendigo, which is in rural Victoria. For those that don't know Victoria, Australia too well, it's about a 2.5 hour drive from the city of Melbourne, and about 3 hours from where I lived, where I grew up. So he comes out to see that game. First off, he almost gets arrested by Border Patrol coming into the country. He has 8, 9, 10 cans of peanuts in his briefcase. Getting off the plane, doesn't declare it. He lives by his own rule, and we'll get to that a little bit later as to why. But he comes with assistant coach Kerry Rupp, who was one of the main guys that recruited me. And I guess Kerry Rupp tells a story that he basically had to calm Coach Majerus down from going at the security officials, the Custom Border Patrol, and kind of talk them out of getting a fine or further sanctions. So he understood he made a mistake. I think he got a written warning, and that was his start to coming to Australia. So then we're playing in Bendigo. He drives out there, and you weren't allowed to watch. This is the NCAA rules for you. It was a dead period for watching games for some reason. You could talk to recruits that had signed. You could not recruit someone that hadn't signed at that period of the year, and you couldn't watch games even if they were involved, because you could potentially be recruiting other players. So I remember he came out to that game. I played horribly. He was watching the game through a little crack through a window upstairs somewhere at Bendigo Stadium or wherever it was. Like, he wasn't exposed to everyone watching the game, just sneakily was watching it. And I played pretty bad. It was an import named Ricky Daniels there, who I believe has a son who's very, very good coming through the NBA Australia program. But he kicked my ass. He was an American import and just knew how to play, physical guy, strong, and just was one of my best games in the ABA there in Siebel. So we then have a game. I think we played on a Friday night in Bendigo. We have a game on Sunday down near Melbourne in Frankston, I believe it was, or somewhere down there. So the whole team was going back Saturday morning, I believe it was, on a bus. So I end up going back Friday night. I go back with Coach Kerry Rupp's driving. I believe I was sitting in the back with Brian Gorgon, and Rick Majerus was in the front. So he's into me as soon as I get in the car. You need to work on your body. You're too skinny. You need to do this. You need to do that. I saw a bit of the game. You're doing this. You're too soft here. Straight away, first time I've met him, right? That was the intro to him. So he's just, this is a 2-3 hour drive. Just he's into me from day one, from minute one, sorry. And what was interesting about it was he would fall asleep mid-speech. So he'd be like, Bogut, you need to do this when you're coming down. And out cold, starts sleeping. So I'm sitting in the car. I look at Brian Gorgon. I'm like, man, what the fuck? And he's just looking at me like, I don't know. Kerry Rupp's just kind of laughing it off, not saying much. He's driving the car, and I'm like, sweet, I'm kind of free. Can just kind of driving down the highway, it's dark, and kind of just tune out and relax after the game a little bit. And then 15, 20 minutes later, he wakes up and continues on with that conversation. So, you just got to keep working hard and get low and do this. And I'm just like, man, what the hell? How do you remember what he was talking about? So he was going in and out like that the whole trip. So I was always like, oh, there's a few red flags coming up here. This guy's might not be all there, right? So anyhow, Saturday, my family, my mum and dad, they put on a dinner that night for Coach Rick Majerus, Coach Kerry Rupp, myself, my mum, my dad, and we invited Marco, my childhood friend that I trained with. You can learn more about him in episode 2, and his parents, his mum and dad. And we thought, maybe the University of Utah will recruit him once he's out of high school. He was a year younger than me, and maybe he'll come over to the Utah. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll go to a smaller school. Just good to network, right? So did all that, and Majerus was Majerus at the dinner table. He was blunt, honest, dropping F-bombs, cunt bombs, you name it, he said it. Farted a few times at the table, and I guess my old man tells me later on I had serious concerns about letting you go play for this guy. I didn't want to ruin anything and didn't say anything at the time, but I had some serious concerns that if this is what the guy's doing in my home at the dinner table, and my dad's a fiery guy, as you'd know by episode 1. He just thought, look, it's better just keep my mouth shut. But I definitely had some serious concerns. So there were a bit of alarm bells, right? Anyway, I get to Utah, and boy, was I right. Those red flags were bright red flags, alarm bells ringing. He did a little bit of those individuals I spoke about, those 2 hours a week we could do. He'd show up every now and then for those sessions. I remember, which we'll touch on later, I have a guest on who can give a bit more color and context around these stories, but he'd move us around to different kind of facilities around campus. Keep in mind, we have the Huntsman Center, which is our own court. We have a practice facility connected to that. He didn't like practicing there because in case he goes over, when he goes over the allotted amount of time for that session, if he's in a private gym where no one else is, he can kind of get around those rules by the NCAA. So we would train in Jewish community centers. We would train in a lot of Mormon churches had basketball courts in them. It was kind of weird at the time. Like, why don't we just train our own? We didn't really realize that we're just stupid young kids. And I guess it was a way to circumnavigate those rules in case someone's there with camera phones were brand new, but someone records a session, someone sees it and says, oh, they were here for 3 hours, whatever it was. So that was his kind of way. But I had a small introduction to him in those sessions of how crazy he was. But it was somewhat tapered, and they weren't long sessions. So it wasn't a team session where it's 2 hours a day every day. So it was 2 hours a week. If you came to 2 out of 3 sessions of those 40-minute sessions, it's an hour and 20 minutes of your time, and then you forget about it. You're doing other stuff. So it didn't really sit on your mind too much. And you're like, the dude's crazy, but it was what it was. You could just go home. But man, once the first team session started, it was on like Donkey Kong. The guy was certifiable at times. One thing I want to preface that I should have said earlier, he has passed away. May he rest in peace. I don't like speaking ill of the dead. I don't think this is speaking ill. I think it's very factual. I have a lot of respect for the way he coached, and I want to separate his basketball coaching talent was second to none. He's one of the best coaches I've ever had. One of the best basketball IQ guys, time and score guys, breaking down other teams' plays. He was he's top of the list. Some of the off-court stuff was very, very questionable, and that's just, it is what it is. And the point of this podcast is to be bluntly honest, and this isn't a conversation that I would run away from if he was sitting right in front of me. So I just want to preface that, and obviously may he rest in peace. But I get to that first team session, and I had the blonde tips and the rat's tail, and I had a haircut of a dickhead really, but he basically goes to me that first session, halfway through, a quarter through, "Hey Bogut, you don't have a haircut by tomorrow, you're running the whole session." So I'm like, oh shit, here we go. So I ended up going to get my haircut at the university barbershop, which was, I guess, people studying to be hairdressers. I grew up being a wog, right? So hair was pretty important. We gel our hair and style our hair and put blonde dye in, just like hair was a big part of who I was, right? So I go to this hairdresser and I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, something's not right here. They look nervous, and so anyway, they put me in the chair, and the kicker was they turn you away from the mirror, so you're facing the other way, right? So that's kind of weird. Like, why is he turning me away from the mirror? So by the time he turned me back around, my hair was butchered. Like, it was, if you go back onto the University of Utah website or find a media guide and check my freshman year photo, the mugshot, he basically just gave me a square box head buzz cut, and it was awful. But anyway, so I got that done. Wasn't too happy about it. Couldn't do anything with it. Looked terrible. My big ass ears and nose sticking out, but it was what it was, right? So I got that done, and I mean, getting to those sessions, it was in your face from day one. There was no honeymoon period. There was no, well, he's player X into this and player Y into this, and he was crazy. He would drop every swear word under the sun. He would cuss out your parents, your grandparents, your auntie, your uncle, your dog, your cat, whatever you had. You pissed him off, he would say something that would try to hurt you, and that's just a lot of cunt, a lot of just derogatory stuff at times, and that was just the way he was. It was understood that this is how he is. This is how he toughens up his players. I mean, could he coach in today's era? I don't think so. It would be one short video that someone records of a session, and he'd be done for life almost, which is a shame to an extent, because I think deep down he had a good heart in there somewhere at times, but I think he hurt just as much people as he helped. He developed a lot of players, but I think he hurt a lot as well, and that's kind of the side you don't see in the stories you don't hear about generally, which we'll get to a little bit later. But every name under the sun, man. Who was your high school coach, Bogut? He was an idiot. They're morons. They should never coach again. They haven't taught you shit. In America, we do things like this. This is in Australia. If you want to do that, go back to Australia. Turn the ball over. Like, what are you doing? We're not playing with kangaroos anymore. Just every day, nonstop. And some of it was funny. Like, I'm not going to lie. Some of the shit, you'd actually laugh. But a lot of times, your teammates would be laughing at you and just be happy that he was on someone else but them. And it would be almost cyclical, where he'd have a different player he'd be going at, and once it was your turn, you might get it for 2 weeks straight, and then he might come back to you, he might not. But there were two particular players that I remember were really affected by him, and both were, so Ryan Wirch from Wisconsin, I think he was a finalist in Mr. Basketball, meaning the best basketballer in your state at that time, and the other one was Steven Zimmerman. He was Mr. Basketball in Utah, a big guy. He was real talented, good footwork, but his body was a little pudgy. Like, he wasn't overweight. He wasn't fat. He just didn't have no tone in his body. So, kind of doughboyish. I don't think he did put a lot of work into his weights in high school, and probably wasn't in a system that emphasized that. So Majerus hated him from day one. He basically said he had cheerleader tits, and his girlfriend's in better shape and all that kind of stuff. And the other kid, Ryan Wirch, was a really good player, knew how to play, and just, I guess, was just crushed confidence-wise, was just so scared to make a mistake. And that was a problem with Rick Majerus at times. He'd have you playing scared to make a mistake, because he was big on turnovers, where you wouldn't want to make a mistake. So then you're not attacking as much as you can. You become very robotic. It's a hard way to play. So you have to kind of adapt to that on the fly. And it would hurt me a lot, because I played very freely, and I'd read and react based on what my defender was doing. So, if a defender overplays on a certain play and I could get by him, and that wasn't the play, I'm going. Like, I'm playing basketball. And he even got on me, for that kind of stuff. And it would put me on my back foot a little bit, but I'd still have another crack. And if I made a mistake, I made a mistake. But the problem was, if you did something good out of it, he'd never say, hey, that was good, So that was just kind of the mentality that he had. So those two kids really struggled. One of them, Stephen Zimmerman, would basically it was sad, man, when you look back at it. As soon as he made his first mistake at practice, whether it was in the first minute or whatever, Rick Majerus would look at him, and he'd correlate that to him not being in shape. He's not mentally sharp because he's sucking wind, and he can't he's not fit. So he'd be like, Stefan, up and back 20 times. And be like, what do you mean 20 times? And that would be when we trained in our arena. 20 times meant you had to go all the way to the top of the arena and touch the wall and come back down. That was one. So think about this. You got the lower bowl up all those stairs. Then you have to run to the concourse, go up the other stairs to go to the upper bowl, touch the top, come down. That's one. And I remember this poor kid, like he'd send it, he'd stop, yell at him. Everyone would kind of stop. All right, he's been sent for 20 up and backs, and then would be in like the fifth drill 25 minutes later, and this kid's still running. He'd be like, where's Stefan at? Still running up and down the stairs. So this kid, long story short, once Majerus had resigned later on that year, we had Christmas holidays. The kid didn't come back. He was gone. He went rogue, as you'd say. He just disappeared. He went up in the hills somewhere. I think his father had a cabin up in the hills in the mountains somewhere. No one saw him. He stopped coming to class. Didn't come to practice. We're trying to find him. What the hell's going on? And he was a scholarship holder. He could have been a professional. He could have played in the NBL in Australia or in Europe in some of the lower leagues and made a good living out of it, but just burnt this kid out. He was a Mormon kid, had a great personality, but ended up being smoking weed every day and grew a beard past his chin, past his neck down to his neck, whatever you want to call it. But that was one example. And then Ryan Wirch, I think he transferred. I don't know if it was. I think it was at the end of that season and went back and played at a small school in Wisconsin, Green Bay, I think. And I think a small school out there. I could be wrong on it being Green Bay, but I think it was. But he was a pretty good player. Like when I first saw him, I was like, man, this kid's really good. He can shoot it, can handle it, could do a little bit of everything. And that was two prime examples of kids that just never really rebounded from the mind fuck that they got from Coach Majerus. But on the flip side, he has developed some guys as well. And I guess it's arguable whether that's the right way to go about things. Everyone kind of reacts differently with that kind of stuff. And Coach Majerus was a guy that it was one paint stroke for everybody. If you didn't like it, you were leaving kind of attitude. So I remember we'd have sessions, and whenever he'd walk in the building, it was you could hear a pin drop, and the seriousness went up 100-fold. The intensity went up. If you were going at 100%, the intensity went up another 100%. He had that kind of aura about him. Like I said, I think he's one of the best coaches I've ever had, X's and O's wise, scouting other teams, breaking down sets. He'd know other teams' sets better than their own players knew them. He'd know random outs, baseline out of bounds plays and slide out of bounds plays. And he was just a basketball aficionado and just knew the game back to front and knew what it took to win. I think he's one of the winningest coaches still to this day of all time, or he's at least up there. I think Utah's home record speaks for itself. It's going to be close to 90% of winning in Utah teams ever really came into that building and beat us. And he was a big part of that. So training sessions, your shirt's tucked in or you run, your shirt comes untucked, you run and a teammate runs for not telling you it's untucked. The mentality was full bore from the moment he was in there till the moment he walked out. Now the kicker is this: he could abuse you and call you every name under the sun for 2 straight hours. The moment he stepped off the court, 1 foot off that line, I still remember it to this day, the first time he did it to me, he put his arm around me. He said, "Now, Bogut, how's everything going? Are you homesick? Do you need anything? You want some food? What can we do for you?" And I'm just like, "Are you serious? This guy's nuts." He was just in me for 2 hours, telling me he regrets recruiting me, go back to Australia. Now he's befriending me. And I guess his mentality was he needs to turn on the off the court stuff even more than most coaches would, because the on the court stuff was so harsh at times. And I think that's just kind of the way he played it in his mind, that he just tried to, I guess, befriend you off the court. And I look, you appreciate it to an extent, but then the very next morning you come in and have a session, he's back in you. So, and this isn't, something that you're like, oh, maybe he was just hard, you just need to suck it up. He was, but there was a lot of sauce on it, and there was some stuff that I've heard everything under the sun. Steve, my trainer, swearing at me in Croatian, swearing at me in English, broken English, all that stuff. I've heard it, but this was a whole nother level from even those guys. And this wasn't just towards players, it was assistant coaches, it was managers, it was anyone helping out. Everyone was walking around on eggshells around this guy, and it was just something you had to tolerate. But I'll get to a few examples of some funny things that he used to do, or that we thought was funny and silly and stupid. I mean, he used to wear these shorts that were from probably the 90s that were really, really small. He's a big fella, big kind of beer gut, thicker guy, and half the time his balls would be hanging out of the shorts. He wouldn't wear underwear, and he'd be just walking around, man. Like, he'd sit down in a chair, his balls would hang out, and the whole team's laughing at him. So he really gave no fucks about anything. He lived in a hotel room on campus, which is well known. It's in newspaper articles, whatnot. He's being quoted by saying, something along the lines of, no matter how bad a day the maid's having, I know I'm always going to get fresh towels and new sheets. I had a few teammates, people that were closer to him, that went to his room, and a lot of times it'd be just shit everywhere and food and pizza boxes and whatnot. And he was a different guy. He didn't have a wife or kids. Just kind of did his own thing, but lived in a hotel campus Marriott, which wasn't a 5-star hotel by any means. It was a 3.5, 4-star hotel, and just was happy living there. But the balls thing was interesting when you didn't know about it, because a lot of the guys already kind of knew, and then there'd be a new recruit like me would come in and be like, "Hey, does anyone notice like his balls are hanging out?" And everyone would just start laughing. So after I get hit by the car on my bicycle, I need a ride home. So we finished training that night pretty late. I think it was 7, 8 o'clock at night, and he offers to give me a ride home. So I'm like, cool, he gives me a ride home, and I jump in the car. He's like, get in the car. First off, he parks heavily illegally on the campus, like where the cars aren't supposed to go. He just parks his car right next to the arena. He had the key to the city in Salt Lake City, knew all the police, knew the mayor, knew everyone. He was the man. Like, you're not messing with him in that city. He could kind of do what he wanted, and he acted that way. He knew he could do whatever the hell he wanted, and no one's going to say shit to him. So I get in the car. He's like, get in the car. I get in, sit in the passenger seat, doesn't get in the car. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Kind of lean over and have a look, and he's just half hunched over, and he's pissing on his own car tire, the front wheel. He's just pissing, having a piss on his own car. It wasn't his car. He had a deal with a car dealership, so I couldn't give a shit because it wasn't his. Pisses on it, gets in the car. I have to go through that main road to get back to the dorms. Runs the red light, doesn't stop. Gets to the stop signs, doesn't stop. I'm like, man, this guy's nuts. Like, he just doesn't care. And I was like, basically saying, like, that was a red light back. Oh, no, it'll be fine. I know everyone here. I know the police. They won't do anything. I'm just like, oh my goodness. This is a whole different world from where I've come from. So that was an adjustment. He, something we'll touch on later with Cody. I won't spoil it. But when high school coaches, even random coaches, come to our practices, he'd somehow end up abusing them, getting them involved in the practices, and you'll see why later, so stay tuned. The Stefan Zimmerman cheerleader body, you got cheerleader tits, the girls down on the cheer squad will be jealous of your body, just absolutely railing him, which was kind of crazy. When we go on the road, he would, God forbid anyone came into any of our practices on the road. Say we're playing in, Las Vegas against UNLV, and we have a shoot around that morning or practice the night before. He saw anyone walking around in there, he would think straight away they're recording our practices and trying to steal information about how we're going to guard them or whatever. He would just start laying into anyone he saw in the upper bowl. Sometimes it'd be arena workers like sweeping. Hey, who's that motherfucker up there? What are you doing? And he'd send one of the assistant coaches and he'd be like, go on, get that motherfucker out of here. And you're just like, whoa. And it's like, hey, I'm the janitor. Like, I don't care what you guys are doing. I've been told I need to clean this place up before the game tomorrow or whatever it was. And, we got a kick out of that because he just, halfway through training, he just spaz out at someone walking by, and that's just who he was. He was himself. He was direct. He was blunt. Whether it was a 12-year-old boy or girl or a 40-year-old man, he didn't care how he put his point forward, and that was the craziest thing about him. He was himself. So he definitely gives you enough ammunition for stories for the rest of your life, and that's something that I touch on with Cody later on in the podcast when he comes on. Is, I guess, when you've worked for Majerus or played for him, you have that bond with everyone else that has played or worked with him, where you can tell these stories, and it's happened to me numerous times. Kevin Lish, former teammate of mine at the Sydney Kings, he played for Rick Majerus at the University of St. Louis. We have very similar stories. Another import, Brian Conklin, who played for the Wollongong Hawks a couple of seasons ago, mentioned a few stories, it's just the same stuff rehashed pretty much. He does the same shit wherever he goes. So anyhow, look, I think, like I said, he helped a lot of players, but he also harmed a lot of players. And then that was a crazy thing. The thing with Rick Majerus that I found very interesting, I had a lot of people I respected that were very fond of Rick Majerus, and he had a lot of people that protected him. So a lot of the things that he did were definitely not right, as far as things he said and did on a basketball court to student athletes. But there were people that would heavily protect him. I'm not sure if they saw a different side of him. I know he's done stuff, which we'll get to later on in my journey once I'm in the NBA, for what he did with me. But he's donated to a lot of charities. He's done all that kind of stuff. So he has a good kind of social presence about him. But then, like a lot of people that do that stuff, I think for the wrong reasons, they're trying to hide what they're really like on the court. And there was a Sports Illustrated article. I'm not sure how long ago now. It might have been 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I don't know if I was in Milwaukee still or if I just got to Golden State, but there was a journalist that basically had dug into Coach Majerus and all the wrongdoings of his past, and some of the stuff was pretty scathing. And I guess they knew my relationship wasn't great with him when he departed the school. And I got calls from a couple of coaches that I respected very much and still respect to this day that begged me not to comment on that article when the journalist contacts me, because they knew he'd eventually get in touch with me. And out of respect to those people, I didn't, because there was one guy in particular that I really respected, and he'd been involved in my career, in different portions of it. But it just amazed me how he had some people that were protecting him at all costs, and it was what it was, right? So I guess the final kind of straw with me and him that really, really got me mad was we play at I don't know where we were playing at that week, but I'm basically going for a rebound. The guy I'm guarding is in the weak side corner, so I'm on the weak side. I help defense, whatever. I'm on the weak side block. Someone shoots it from the opposite wing. Now we have a rule with Rick Majerus that his big thing was defense and rebounding. If you get those two things right, you got a really good chance to win every game, right? So with rebounding, it was you always head check. If your man's on the perimeter, you head check, you turn around, you physically look, is he coming? If he's crashing to the rebound, then I take a step towards him, hit him, and then box him out. Now, if you head check and your opponent, say he's at the 3-point line, he doesn't come, you then turn around and try to get the rebound. That was a basic rule, right? So it's pretty common sense. So I head check as someone shoots his shot from the opposite wing. And a teammate was a kid from Denmark, Jonas Longvard, and he doesn't crash the rebound. He stays in the corner. So I turn and get the rebound. Of course, this ball goes right over my head into the corner. Rick Majerus is sitting on a basket stanchion. So the bottom part of the basket, kind of the back part, the backing, he's sitting on that. It's probably only about, a foot high. So he's sitting down. He's a big fella. He starts hollering at me straight away, Bogut, you pussy, box out. What the fuck are you doing? This, that. So I just said, hey, I head checked. He didn't come. What the fuck do you want me to do? I can't jump 25 feet in the air on a bad bounce and get the rebound. Unless you want me to run to the perimeter to box a guy out, then I'm taking myself out of rebounding position, right? So he doesn't want to hear it. He starts to waddle his way to his feet, trying to stand up from that low position as a big guy is hard. Took him 20 or 30 seconds. It felt like an eternity. He stands up and he has a water bottle in his hand, that small water bottle, and he starts walking towards me and he's like, fuck you, and just throws this bottle, pivots it at me. I'm like, here we go. So this bottle's coming straight towards me. Thankfully, it drops about a foot or two, a meter right before me, and then slides and smacks me in the foot. So I'm like, okay, here we go. I got an excuse now. So I just start V-lining towards him. I don't think I would have punched him, but I would have definitely got in his face and had a crack and yelled back and whatever. And I get basically grabbed by the assistant coaches and some players. They take me to the tunnel, the locker room. We're going backwards and forwards. I'm like, at that point I said it, fuck you. I'm going to Europe, man. I don't need this. I want to get out of here. So then I go back to the locker room. I shower up. I don't say shit to anyone. I walk back to the dorm rooms. And from what I understand, he shit himself because he thought I was done. He sent an assistant coach to make sure, I'm all good and get me back square, that it can calm me down. And the funny thing was, it was during Christmas holidays. So at universities, when everyone goes home for Christmas, they usually go to their home cities where they're from. The kids that stay on campus all have to move out of their dorm room into one building. So they want all the students remaining on campus to move to one building for obvious reasons. If there's a fire, they know where all the students are. They don't want kids stealing shit. If there's only 3 kids left in one apartment block, bad shit can happen. So the assistant coaches didn't know my new dorm room, so I turned my phones off. I didn't answer them. I made them panic and stress. This kid's gone. He might have gotten on a plane and gone home, but we don't know where he's at. We can't find him. And then eventually by midnight that night, this was an afternoon training session, I finally answered the door to my assistant coach, and they talked me off the ledge, and I came to practice the next day, and Coach Majerus didn't mention it. Didn't say a word to me. I joined the drills, and I thought he was going to light into me again. Didn't say anything. Just totally ignored it. Left me alone for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then that following week was on me again like normal. So that was, it was just interesting. It was just an interesting time. He was a coach that would get the best. I think he got the best out of players, to be honest with you, that weren't overly talented. If you were a low to middle tier player with an unbelievable work ethic that could take a lot of shit, he would turn you into some sort of professional. I'm not saying NBA player, but he would turn you into somewhat of a professional. The uber talented guys that came in, I saw more often than not just wouldn't work out. He'd take confidence away from you. Guys would shut down, and it was just interesting looking at it as maybe a psych study or something like that. I write a thesis on it that I think he really did well with guys that would overwork knowing they weren't talented, and just if it was just hard. It kind of felt like at times with me, I was pretty talented at that time, and he took some of my confidence away at times where I wouldn't be as aggressive because, like I said, I'd be scared to make a mistake, and that was no way to play basketball, and that's just no way to do anything in life. If you're scared to make a mistake, you're almost playing to lose. He was a coach that I guess made you question how much you love basketball on a daily basis. Do you love it enough to deal with this shit every day? Do you love basketball enough to come in here and be motherfucked and be told you're one of the worst recruits he's ever seen, and your parents failed, and are you in love with the game that much? Thankfully, my answer was yes. But there were days I questioned it. I'm not going to lie to you. There were days I'd wake up and be like, man, I don't know if I can take this shit anymore. You go have a meal, have a nap, and then you'd be refreshed. And then you go through that 2-3 hours. And then at the end of the session, you'd almost want to quit. And then the next day you refresh, and you just kept grinding that. You ride on that horse every day and just grinded it out. And eventually you get there. But it was hard. It was probably one of the hardest parts of my journey, and I knew it was that last step to get to the next level that I had to get through, but it's easier said than done. So he has a few blow-ups with me a few times. We play at Colorado. They're a very good team. They had a big fella named, I think his name was David Harrison, very big, kind of Baby Shaq-like at that point in his career for college. He ended up getting drafted to play for the Indiana Pacers. I believe he was in that big brawl, I think Indiana versus Detroit, where it spilled into the crowd. I believe he was on that team as a rookie or second-year player. But we beat them in Colorado. I remember I missed a box out right before halftime. Someone's shooting a free throw, and we're the defensive team. I box out, and the ball just goes right over my head, and the guy behind me grabs it. They don't score out of it. But as we're walking to the tunnel, he's in me already before we even get to the locker room, starts cussing me out, laying into me. So I'm trying to walk faster just to get away from this dude. And he's waddling after me. I can just hear him behind me, cussing me out. So then he comes straight into the locker room, lays into me, and then he almost collapses. He almost passes out. So coaches have to grab him. We're like, what's going on? Does he have a heart attack? And then I'm copping shit from my teammates. You killed coach, man. You killed coach. Half jokingly. Once we knew it wasn't that serious, he coached the rest of the game. And then we had another run-in at Air Force where I was getting my ass kicked and just not playing well, and had another run-in at halftime there. So he was on me. And then we get to a week before our first game against BYU, which is a huge rivalry. BYU is about an hour and a half bus trip from Salt Lake City in Provo, Utah. Utah versus BYU is one of the big rivalry games in all of not only college basketball, college football, but college sports, big rivalry, right? So I think Duke, North Carolina, those equivalents on that side of the country. So it's Monday morning. Our game's on a Saturday. We're preparing for that. I think I don't know who we just played, but we're preparing for that game. I think we just lost, and we all get pulled out of class one by one. So my class was at 8:50 a.m. I get pulled out of class. What's going on? What did I do? Am I in trouble? And we meet at the Huntsman Center offices. The whole team's there in the boardroom. And we're all waiting. What's going on? I can't remember who came and told us. It might have been one of our assistant coaches, but basically says, Coach Majerus has had a heart attack. He's, he's not going to coach this week. We don't know when he'll be back, blah, blah, blah. And, there was some tears in that room. The interesting thing was one of the teammates asked, well, can we go visit him in hospital? Well, you can't go visit him. He got on a flight and flew out to California. Like, hang on a second, did he have a heart attack? Or how did he get on a plane? A few of the guys were already like, what the hell's going on? Something doesn't add up. But we didn't know. We thought legit he had a heart attack. So we got tears, this, that. We don't hear from this guy again till right before the conference tournament, which was months down the track. Hear nothing. Not a good day, hello, not a phone call, nothing. And the only reason that got done was our basketball ops guy thought it'd be a good idea, much to the detriment of our then coach who took over, who was an assistant, Kerry Rupp. He didn't even know about it, but our basketball ops guy thought it'd motivate us going to the conference tournament. And he had a conference call with us and basically just said, good luck, guys. I'm with you, this, that. And that was it. Never had any interaction with him after that. I didn't personally, neither did the team, which was disappointing because a lot of guys signed to go to that school predominantly because of Coach Majerus, and he basically just taken off on us. And we at the time thought it was because of a heart issue. Now, I did a bit of digging and had come to find out there was a kid named Lance Allred. He's got a fantastic story in himself, and I urge you to Google his name, Lance Allred. He played at the University of Utah for a couple of years and then transferred to Weber State, which was another school in Utah. I believe Damian Lillard went there and a few other big-time players have come through there. A smaller school, but a really, really good school when it comes to punching above their weight. So he transfers there anyway. Lance Allred is, I believe, the only deaf player to ever play in the NBA. Unbelievable story. He played in the G League for a number of years, and I think he played a little bit overseas, but he would wear hearing devices and whatnot. And from my understanding, when he was at the University of Utah, Rick Majerus said some really, really bad things to him on the basketball court at times about his disability, about his hearing. And I guess the kid transferred back in the early 2000s, transferred to Weber State. Apparently an investigation was done. Lance went to university officials and was like, this is why I'm transferring, this guy's blah, 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 blah. They deem the investigation doesn't go anywhere. They don't find any conclusive evidence, even though there were a few witnesses that corroborated the story, whatever. That all gets swept under the rug. So you fast forward to the year I'm there. We play Weber State about a month before that BYU game. And I guess we didn't read the media much then. The internet wasn't what it was. I'm not buying the local paper. The Salt Lake Tribune had a full-page spread about Lance Allred because the University of Utah is playing Weber State. So it's almost a welcome back for Lance, his story. The story is basically he's airing everything about Rick Majerus in that story. And it's pretty in your face. It's pretty, you read it and you don't come out with a good taste in your mouth about what transpired, even if 10% of it was true, put it that way, right? So my understanding is that article came out early in the year, January. Everyone's kind of on holidays coming back, so school's starting to ramp up, and then I believe the NCAA somehow gets involved, the school gets involved, and we're gonna have to investigate this again. I guess there was some back and forth. Rick basically said, from what I understand, was if you investigate me, I'm gone the next day. I'm out. See you later. Find a new coach. To what you got to do. So the school kind of sat on it for a bit, and I guess towards the end of that month, the end of January, had finally officially let Rick Majerus know that look, we're going to reopen the case, and the article was pretty scathing, and we're getting pressure and blah 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 blah. He said, "All right, see you guys later. See you tomorrow." He was gone, and it was. That's the story that I believe sounds a little bit better than the heart attack and getting on a plane. It makes sense now why he got on a plane, but he was gone. Didn't see him again after that, and he ended up getting a few jobs down the line after that. And I actually have some pretty crazy stories that followed myself and Rick Majerus, a year or two after he had left. So we'll get to those later on, probably episode 5 or 6, around about the draft time. People that have followed me will know exactly what I'm talking about. But so Kelly Rupp takes over anyway. He takes over as a head coach. It kind of felt like some freedom. He gave us confidence to play within the Majerus structure of everything that we've learned, but have a bit more freedom. Don't be fearful of mistakes. And we end up making a run. We end up going to, I played my best basketball that year under Coach Kerry Rupp. We ended up going to the Mountain West Conference tournament and winning that on the buzzer in the final against UNLV, I believe. We go get an automatic bid to the tournament, and we go to the NCAA tournament. We play Boston College, who I believe had Greg Smith, Jared Dudley, a few other players. And they were pretty good, and they beat us just. I think it was a 5 or 6 point game at the end, but we were in the game the whole time. Funnily enough, that game was in the Bradley Center, which would then become my home. Once I got drafted in the NBA, that's where the Milwaukee Bucks played, so didn't realize it at the time. I mean, that's basically where all that sits. So right now, we will get a bit more color around all these stories and welcome a good friend of mine to this day, Cody Fueger. So here's that interview. So I'd like to welcome a special guest, Cody Fueger, a good friend of mine to this day. I first got introduced to Cody at the University of Utah. He was basically the team manager, video coordinator, student assistant, however you want to word it, but basically took care of a lot of our gear, made sure everything was organized, and predominantly was Rick Majerus' personal assistant for the most part. So he was a very, very busy man doing a lot of different things. I'll run through his history. So from 2002 to 2007, he was the Utah video coordinator and student assistant, then went on to Louisiana Tech as director of basketball ops, 2007 to 2011. Then off to UC Riverside, he was director of basketball ops there for a year, 2011 to 2012. Then off to Utah State as the director of basketball ops, 2012 2013. Down at BYU, a big rival of the University of Utah. I gave him a lot of shit for that. The director of basketball ops there from 2013 to 2015. then to Utah Valley as an assistant coach. So out of the kind of ops role, which is something you always wanted to do, and get on the court and be actively coaching from 2015 to 2019, and presently back with the BYU Cougars, a big rival team of the University of Utah. So welcome to the show, Cody.
Hey, Bogues, thanks for having me on, man.
No worries. Yeah, look, we were part of some ups and downs at the University of Utah, so it made sense to get you on. I mean, we're friends still to this day. It was a small world because when I was drafted to the Milwaukee Bucks, you're originally from Milwaukee, so you were pumped about that. Your family still lived there. I spent some Christmas dinners with your mum and dad and yourself at times, and had the family over. So it's a small world. But how do you remember all that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the day that, the Bucks had the number 1 pick and they drafted you. And, I mean, that was an incredible time for me. I'm a 22-year-old guy and one of my best friends to be drafted by my hometown NBA team. That was an incredible experience. And my parents still, talk about that stuff to this day. And, my uncle and brother and his family and all that stuff. So it was a pretty cool experience coming straight out of college.
Yeah, no doubt. And we got to kind of network and try to help each other out along the years, many different facets, and got you to some NBA training sessions. And we try to help each other as much as we can. But I guess my freshman year, to start out, when was the first time you heard about me? Because obviously back then technology wasn't what it is today, where you could get film easily or video easily. It was still VHS kind of starting to turn into DVD. But kind of what was the first thing you heard or knew about me?
Yeah, so I remember it was my first year at University of Utah, and you were supposed to come in at the winter semester. Do you remember that? But there was something about your
after
grade.
Christmas. Yeah, it wasn't grades. It wasn't grades. It was I was short a credit, which
that's what it was.
The NCAA wouldn't let me speak about it at length on the pod. But yeah, they wouldn't let me over because I was short 1 credit, which was either a physical or a social science. So it's pretty funny you mentioned the grades because Rick Majerus, the head coach, and the assistants all thought I was an absolute dumbass when I got there because I didn't make it in time. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I remember that, but I just remember Coach Majerus would be talking in practice to, Tim Frost and Britton Johnson, before you were coming over, be like, get ready for this Andrew Bogut because he's going to come here and he's going to kick all your guys' butts and he won't be playing, basically. That's what he was telling all those guys. And then, when you finally did come over, it was, during the summer, and I remember we picked you up from the airport. And what did I say about you?
Oh, it was about a week in, so it was maybe about a month actually. And you looked at me one day. We're in the car together. You were basically my chauffeur for the first month or so, making sure I got to everywhere in your Toyota Camry. I still remember it. And you turned to me one day and you said, "Man, you speak really good English." You fucking dumbass. What language do you think we speak in Australia? And you're like, Australian? I'm like, oh man, Wisconsin boy. From the Midwest, not too educated about the rest of the world back then, was old Cody, but it was hilarious. And I've given you shit about that for the last 20 years.
Yeah, you gotta understand, I'm from Wisconsin. Like, I was on 2 planes total growing up when I was younger, and that was to Florida Disney World, and never did any traveling. Surprisingly, I didn't care much about Australia, what was going on at that time over there. But I just kept on hearing about how good of a player you were and how you're going to make an immediate impact on the University of Utah basketball team, which was a powerhouse at that time.
Yeah, we won a lot of games, which we'll touch on later. But so then I guess is the flip side. I remember landing at the airport and not knowing who I'm meeting, coming from Australia, flew by myself, didn't know if it was a coach or a manager or whoever. And I think it was Scott Garson was there. And I don't know if you were there. Were you at the airport?
I think I was at the airport, but it was quick. I think I was at the airport, but it was quick. I was just there just to help out with whatever was needed or carry a bag or who knows what. But yeah, you and I spent a ton of time together right away. Yeah, taking you around for wherever you needed to go at that time.
Oh, just doing paperwork and signing to the university, doing the dorm paperwork and showing me where dining hall was and driving me around.
All your international stuff, all those papers, and then driving you to get your first haircut in Utah too, I think. Yeah,
I mentioned that. That was interesting. So I got off the plane. I had the blonde tips, long fringe, the undercut with a rat tail. And I speak about that at length that once we had formal practice start, Rick Majerus basically said, if you don't have that shit cut off by tomorrow, you're running all sessions. So that was enough for me. I went straight to the campus barbershop school, funnily enough, and they're absolutely butchered my hair, but it was really cheap and I had no money, so I kind of had no choice. So that was definitely interesting. What were kind of your first impressions, I guess, once I was on the court? I mean, we only could really do the 2-hour sessions or 2 hours total a week because of the NCAA rules. Are they still the same, by the way?
Now during fall and spring, outside of the 20 hours a week that we're usually allowed, now it's 4 hours a week on the court. So they've added those up a little bit.
And you can split that however you want, or
yeah, we can spend that however we want on the court, and then we get 8 hours total. We can use 4 hours in the court and 4 hours in the weight room for a week during those times.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I was there, it was 2 hours individuals, which we broke up to 3 40-minute sessions, and then scrimmaged and did weights, which was quote unquote voluntary. That was kind of the way to get around it.
I don't know if you remember your first individual workout, but it was in the Huntsman Center, and Coach Majerus was talking about you setting a ball screen and rolling to the basically the short corner for a shot, and I don't know if you remember this, but, he's like, oh, Bogut, I love it. You set a big wide screen and then I want you rolling right here to this, short corner. So you set a great screen, you rolled, and then he's like, now I want you to get your butt down and be ready to shoot. And then if you remember, Coach Majerus is like, oh, Christ, Bogut, you don't need to get that low. It's not like you're going to have prison sex right now. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I kind of remembered it a couple of sessions in because I felt like he was on us so much those first couple of sessions about getting low and wide and getting to basketball stance. He was huge on that, and people don't understand. Every session he'd mention that 15, 20 times. You're not low enough, and he felt like if you weren't in a basketball stance that you weren't ready to play, and it was that whole correlation, you're not ready to go, blah, 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 blah. But I used to just shit myself about getting in trouble for not being low enough, so I guess I just overdid it to the point where I was probably almost sitting in a chair, and I remember that because I got shit for that from my teammates for the rest of the year, and especially you still mention it to this day. So that was my welcome.
I'm pretty sure that was the first workout because you were on it. I mean, you were on it that first workout. You were moving so well, and you were so hungry to hear what Coach Majerus was saying. And man, that was a great first workout for me to laugh.
Do you remember when we did the individual sessions? Whenever we'd try to, I guess, get an extra hour or two in, which wasn't really allowed. Do you remember what Rick used to do? We used to find the most random gyms in Salt Lake City. We wouldn't go and use our Huntsman gym because he was scared that someone would see us going 10 minutes over individual sessions. So we'd be training at like random Mormon churches, the Jewish Center, and it was just like
the Jewish Community Center.
I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, why don't we have an arena and a training facility? What the hell are we doing moving around? I didn't get it then, but you look back now and you're like, yeah, because our sessions were going over time a little bit back then.
Yeah, those 3 40-minute sessions were really 3 hour-and-a-half sessions, I think.
Yeah, and you were the one that had to usually organize the gyms and drive out and make sure it was available. And if one thing went wrong, you'd hear about it, right?
Every single time. And we always had to go to the Jewish Community Center. We went there a ton. I remember that during that time. And that church gym right across the street from the Huntsman Center. And Coach Majerus would be using all types of language in that place at all different times of day.
Oh man, we'll get to that. That's a laundry list of funny stories. I guess we weren't really that close. We were kind of forced to be close early on just because you were my taxi driver essentially, helping me run all the errands and get everything right. But then once that was done, we didn't really see a whole lot of each other. You were, as I said, basically Majerus' personal assistant, and just he had you, which we'll touch on a bit later, had you doing all kinds of different things. But I guess our relationship got a bit closer later on that season, and even possibly the next season, because you lived off campus and had a few house parties and kind of invited me over, and that was kind of, I finally got out of my shell a little bit and came out, and you welcomed me into your home and all that, and that's kind of when our relationship built, right?
Yeah, for sure. Had a couple house parties, and you and I started to get a lot closer and hanging out. And when Coach Majerus would when he kind of stepped away from the Utah team, that's just when I had more time. So I think you and I spent a lot more time together too during practice and different things like that. But it was definitely house parties, and there were some Sundays I think you and I just would go to the mall or something like that, and
Rumbies.
Yeah, Rumbies. We'd always go to Rumbies and eat. That was one of our spots.
Yeah, Rumbies was a Hawaiian kind of teriyaki type joint. It's probably, I think it's still there actually on, was it 600 North, 900 North, one of those streets? Yeah, I remember that. And then you had to be very careful. You couldn't pay for me obviously because of the NCAA rules. So that was always interesting. But yeah, I guess that's when our relationship definitely got closer, and I kind of saw you as a genuine kind of person, and I like the assistance as well. But it was kind of, I guess you were that conduit away from Majerus breaking my balls. You could kind of, have a little bit of a chat just because you were around the team a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely when Coach stepped away, just had a lot more free time and kind of figured out that I could be a normal, genuine human being around you guys during those times.
Yeah, for sure. Look, we'll get to Majerus now. I mean, may he rest in peace. Obviously, it's always hard to talk about someone that's passed, but in my pod, I talk about him being probably still to this day one of the smartest coaches, if not the smartest coach I've ever played for. I think he had an unbelievable feel for the game. We as a team were never underprepared ever, not even close. We were probably overprepared sometimes, probably even too much, because he'd know every set they ran, every counter. He'd know their baseline plays. He'd know random game winner plays. He'd know everything. I speak about we would routinely hold opposing star players below their average. So if they averaged 20, they weren't going to get 20 against us. And if they did manage to hit their number, they'd be shooting at 20 or 30%. But yeah, I think he had an aura, a confidence, somewhat, cockiness about him. But it was, as far as winning basketball games, there was probably no one better at that time. It was probably him and Bobby Knight, right? That were the winningest guys. And we weren't really a top major school, like a Kentucky or a UConn. We were kind of, above mid-major, but at times a very hard place to recruit because, the Mormon thing, Salt Lake City, sometimes people don't want to come out there. It's not a huge party school. So it caused some issues with recruiting, especially players from the Midwest and the East Coast. But how do you remember? I know you loved everything Majerus did basketball-wise. How do you remember those days?
Yeah, I mean, he was, being from Wisconsin, he's from Wisconsin originally, and I got to know him, through his basketball camps in Wisconsin. We kind of had a good relationship. He liked me because I was one of the hardest workers always in camp. So we kind of had a good relationship. Then he asked me to come work for him at Utah, and for me, it was like a dream come true because I knew I wanted to coach, and I was with one of the best coaches in the country at that time, right? I mean, he was just winning games left and right. I'm sure a huge part for you is he was so good at developing post players, right? Bigs. And, he went to the 1998 championship game. And I mean, it was where basically Gonzaga is now. That's what, Coach Majerus had Utah rolling at that time. I mean, he was winning nonstop, and he was the king of Utah, right? He had a key to the city. He had, he's best friends with Huntsman. Best friends with, all the main guys with the Jazz. I mean, he was the guy in the state of Utah, and he held us all accountable, didn't he, Andrew?
He definitely did. He was, like I said, he had that aura. And whether it was at a restaurant sitting with him talking, whether it was him walking into a gym, I speak about in the pod, whenever we'd be at training sessions and generally, you come to a training session and the training session's at 11 a.m. or 2 p.m., whatever time. Let's say it's 2 p.m. The players get there at 12:30, tape up, stretch, get on the court by 1:30. And we're usually, bantering with each other. There's assistant coaches there where we're talking shit, probably getting shots up at 60, 70%, just trying to loosen yourself up and get warm. And I still remember to this day, whenever that dude would walk in the gym, whether that door was, 100 feet away from the court or on the road or wherever we were, it was like a pin fucking drop. It was, everyone all of a sudden was going 120%. The assistant coaches were standing straight up, and everyone had a stone look on their face. It was army-like.
Yeah.
And that's the aura and the presence that he brought was, there's no bullshit here. The moment I walk in, you better be working. And I also talked about if, before training, if you're doing some shooting drills with the coach, it used to be the worst if he would pick your station and come before training and already start railing, your footwork's horrible. What are you doing there? What's this? And you're not even really officially in the training session yet, and he's already on you. But that was the aura, right? And he had that. It wasn't only for players, it was for assistant coaches. I spoke about Scott Garson, maybe saw the inside of his apartment 5 hours a day if he was lucky, yourself as well, the hours that you worked. But talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I'd usually meet Coach Majerus maybe at the steps or something before practice, and he could show up. If practice started at 3, he could show up at 3:05, 3:20, 2:59. But as soon as he walked in that gym, or as soon as he took a step on the stairs, he started coaching from the top of the arena, right? And like you said, Andrew, you just felt that man's presence, and you went from 100% to 150. You were flying around at that time as soon as he walked in. You remember there was Mike the walk-on who took a shot, I think, during one of the practices.
No, I don't know.
So Mike the walk-on was just shooting. And Coach Majerus took a step in the gym. And at that time, walk-ons should be rebounding for the scholarship guys. And Coach Majerus took a step inside the gym and just started lighting up Mike the walk-on. Mike, you got one effing job here. You get these players better. Don't I ever see you take a shot on this court again. And so he had little Mike running around, rebounding after that. But you're right. His presence, his aura, everybody listened to him and looked up to him. And I mean, he did absolutely no wrong at that place. And you could just feel like the aura, the greatness around him.
Yeah, and then it's funny you say the coaching as soon as he got in the building. Do you remember, I don't know if you remember this story, but he showed up late for a practice, I think 20, 30 minutes into the session. And we were at the Huntsman, and he came in through the one entry near the I think the main basket. He came through that tunnel area there, and it was snowing outside. So he had I think he had Timberlands or boots on for the snow. And then as he's walking onto the court, he wasn't dressed. He still had his coat on. So he starts, as he's undressing and changing from his boots to his basketball shoes and shorts, he was coaching. So for like half the session, he's got one sock on and one shoe on. Then he's got a sock on his hand that he's about to put on, and then saw something and starts cussing someone out. And it took him like 30 minutes to fully be dressed. And you're just like, this dude's nuts. Like, and he like you said, once he walked in, it didn't matter what was going on. The roof could have been falling down. There could have been rain coming through a hole in the bit. He didn't care. He was like locked in on, what is this guy doing? What are you doing? What's going on here? I also spoke about the shirt tucked in rule, right? Where we were big on tucking your shirt in. And I remember he used to say, if your shirt untucks, you're running. Yep. And if you're a teammate and you see your teammate's shirt untucked and you don't tell him, you're running with him.
Yeah, he was relentless about all the stuff that, he didn't do also, because he never had his shirt tucked in for any days of practice. But I do remember that practice where he was coaching with a sock on his hand. It looked like he had a little hand puppet or something for 30 minutes.
And for the listeners, that was like every day. Like, at least for the players, some shit would happen like that with him, that he would do something crazy. He would do something funny. I mean, you've probably got stories 10 times as great as that because you were around him kind of in a more intimate setting doing errands for him. But man, it was always fun to get away from those training sessions as hard as they were and just actually sit back and laugh kind of at his expense or for what he did. And I guess that's kind of how we stuck together, considering how tough he was on us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's all it was, is that all of us, including the assistant coaches, trainer, all the players, walk-ons, everybody, managers, everybody had to come together just because his wrath was coming at anybody at any time. And like you said, we could laugh about it and joke about it later on, but we all had to come together to kind of all our force just against his force, because he was hard and he pushed everyone to the limit every single day.
Yeah, he did. And I think, going to a little bit of a negative, I think sometimes it went past the line, obviously. There were times where he was so passionate and so fiery on that court. It didn't matter what was going on in your off-court life, you wouldn't get a pass. And I think there were a lot of players, he developed a lot of players, but I feel like he also probably hindered a lot of players. And at times he would take your confidence away, especially if you were a freshman or a sophomore. I feel like with Coach Majerus, you kind of, after you've been with him for a couple of years, he gave you kind of a bit more freedom. I remember Nick Jacobson, couldn't take a bad shot because he was a senior. It was like, and then you take the same shot next play down and you get cussed out and you're like, what the hell's going on? It's the same shot. And that was, I guess, respect and time and presence earned, and he would give you a leeway, but you had to be there and take his wrath for 2 or 3 years. But on the flip side, I remember we had 2 players, one Ryan Wirch from Wisconsin and Stefan Zimmerman from from Utah. They were both, I believe they were both Mr. Basketball from their state. Is that correct?
Wirtz was close. I don't know if he was Mr. Basketball, but he was close. He was definitely one of the best players from Wisconsin at that time. And Zimmerman was for sure. Yeah, he was a Mr. Basketball.
And look, those two guys were prime examples of guys that I think he broke. You know, he completely broke those two guys. I remember, you know, Stefan Zimmerman he was a very good player. He had a lot of shit to him. He had a very good footwork for a big man, but he just couldn't get in proper physical shape. He wasn't overweight. He was just pudgy, never really spent a lot of time in the weight room. And, you know, I don't know if you remember, but Majerus would just wait for him to make one mistake at practice and then correlate that to him being out of shape and then be like, take your cheerleader tits and go and run 20 up and backs up the arena bowl. And he'd have to run up and back. And people think I'm exaggerating. So that would happen. And 30 minutes later, you'd be doing a different drill and you look over and this dude's still running the stairs. You're just like, yep. When is he coming back? I think I got 5 up and backs one session and I was like about to die. This poor kid. And that was his experience of Utah basketball basically every day.
No question. It was like as soon as Coach Majerus walked in that day, looks at Zimmerman's like just walking to the free throw line or something after he's working out. And he's like, Zimmerman, see you, buddy. 50. You know, send him on 50 up and backs up the stairs. And Wirtz was pretty tough on too. So I agree with that. There was some guys for sure that really had a hard time. You know, Wirtz, I think, transferred to University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, and then Zimmerman, I think he just was done with basketball after that.
Oh no, he went rogue. You don't remember? I mean, I touched on it a little bit on the pod. So once Majerus had resigned and Kerry Rupp had taken over, we had those Christmas holidays. I don't know if you remember, and he didn't come back. So we didn't know where the hell he went. And I believe he went up into the hills or he went somewhere. I think his dad at a cabin or something and he just disappeared and went caveman status for, I think a few months. And then we saw him in February or March and he had like a beard past his neck. And yeah, he went full on, man. Like, I think he really was affected by it. And, you know, he kind of disappeared for a bit, which was kind of strange.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I remember a little of that. And I mean, another guy that was obviously affected that we both know really well is Big Red, Chris Jackson. He had a tough time with Coach too, and he was definitely really hard on a lot of guys. And
it'd just be random. Like sometimes it would be, we kind of joked about it. Hopefully it's you this week. Hopefully it's not me. And sometimes he'd be on you for 6 or 7 straight sessions, and sometimes he wouldn't talk to you for a week or two. As far as getting after you, it was just kind of, if he saw something that you were doing that was crazy, it was, you set your week up bad because you knew the next 5 or 6 days he'd be on your ass.
For sure. I remember one specific instance even with you, right, where I think you turned the ball over and Majerus just lost it, right? And he threw he threw the water bottle right at you, right?
Oh, no, it was for a box out. Yeah, so I talk about this. So basically, I was guarding Jonas Longvard at the time from Denmark, and he was
Jonas
in the far. Good.
Yeah,
he was in the. Yeah, Majerus used to call him Living Good. He didn't get his name right ever. The whole time he was there, but like Jonas was in the weak side corner, and I was help D, and I was on the block, and pointing my pistols, and remember we had a rule where you had to head check.
Oh yeah.
When a shot went up, you head check and see if your man's coming. And basically the rule was if your man was crashing, you take a step towards him outside the paint, you crack him, and then you go and get the rebound. And if he stays on the perimeter or gets back on D, then you don't take a step out of the paint, you try to get the rebound. So I don't know who shot it, but they shot the biggest brick of all time. So of course, they shoot it from the opposite 45. It goes over my head. Jonas doesn't come. I head check. He stays in the corner. Over my head, right into his hands in the corner, and Majerus was sitting on the basket stanchion on the bottom of it, the middle baskets, and it takes him. He says something like, Bogut, what the fuck are you doing? Box out, blah 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 blah. And first time I fired back, I said, I head checked. He didn't come. The ball went over my fucking head. Like, what do you want me to do? I can't jump 20 feet in the air. And so then he starts trying to get up off that stanchion, which took him about 30 seconds. He's a big dude and they're only about a foot off the ground. So they're kind of awkward for anyone to get off of. And then he had a water bottle in his hand and just like, fuck you. What did you say? Fuck you. And throws the bottle at me. And he was railing me already for a month straight. And I was taking it. And the bottle was never going to do me any damage. It landed about 2 or 3 feet in front of me and rolled, hits my foot. And then that's when everything else happened. So I'll let you finish the rest of that story.
And then you walked out of practice, right?
Well, first I walked towards him.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I have a free pass to. I don't think I was going to punch him because I was like, if I hit this dude, he could drop. We might not see him again. But I was going to get in his face for sure. And I think a bunch of the assistants grabbed me and kind of petitioned me towards the locker room. And I don't know if you remember, I basically said, fuck you, I'm going to Europe. I'm signing to Europe. Because I was getting those European deals, which were pretty big numbers before I came to the university, but still, because I gave my word, I wanted to come. So I feel like I was getting the raw end of the stick. And it was Christmas holidays. I went back to my apartment, and I don't know if you remember, but they moved us for the Christmas holidays that week to a different building from my regular dorm room. So none of you could find me. No one could find me for like I wouldn't answer my phone. And I think Kerry Rupp finally found me at like midnight and kind of talked me off the ledge.
I remember that for sure, because as soon as one of the assistants was kind of bringing you to the locker room, Majerus went over to Rupp right away. It's like, you go find him and you make sure he's all right and everything's good and we can get this kid back.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So then I came in the next day, and that was what was so wacky about Rick was, so I come in at training the next day. I think it was a game day, and we had shoot around in the morning at the Hyper at the kind of the student courts, and I'm like walking in ready to get cussed out, and he didn't say a word to me. I got on the baseline, joined the drill, did not say one thing for me, and he actually left me alone for maybe 4 or 5 days. It was the longest amount of time he didn't cuss me out. And then I think not long after that, we went to the NIT, I think, and that was a whole different game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, well, the first game of the year, remember we were playing University of Minnesota, and they had Jason Humphreys, who was another
Chris
freshman.
Humphreys, yeah, Chris Humphreys.
Chris Humphreys, that's
formerly Chris Humphreys Kardashian. Yep.
Yeah. Chris Humphreys. Yeah, we were playing them, and we win that game. And he had an okay game, but you just dominated him. You had like 17 points, 19 rebounds. And I remember just after that game, Coach Majerus talking to the staff, saying, "This Andrew Bogut is the real deal." And holy cow, guys, we got ourselves somebody here. And he was really fired up after that game because you dominated Mulatto. I mean, dominated Hopers. Do you remember the film session that we had right before that game?
Yeah, he called him mulatto. He basically was saying, so this, Chris Humphreys he's a tan white boy essentially, right? But he was saying, Bogut, there's this big black guy. He's gonna kick your ass if you don't blah blah. And just that was the whole lead up to the Minnesota game, right? So then we finally watched film, and I'm like, where is this dude? Watching the film, I'm like, the guy in my position is not black. What is he talking about? And then was it you or someone said, he's white? Someone told him.
Or I think it was Richard Cheney. Richard Cheney goes, Coach, that guy's white right there. And Majerus just lost it. He's like, he's effing mulatto, okay? His dad's black and his mom's white.
Yeah. Nah, he's not. He's not. But that was Rick. He had it in his head, and I just remember, coming into that game kind of nervous just because I'm looking for this big black dude who's just going to destroy me. And I'm like, they're starting big men are both white guys. Like, what's going on? But that was Rick to a T. But I mean, after that bottle incident, it was I guess it was an opportunity where I finally had to push back a little bit on everything going on. And he was pretty hard on me. I guess you could argue that he saw a lot of potential in me and was like, I need to push this kid. But I mean, some of it was pretty crazy. It was, as you said, turning the ball over. What did he say to me?
Well, I think he said, Andrew, I don't know what they call that in your country, Australia, but in this country, that's an effing turnover when you turn it over during practice.
Yeah, and that was every day. It was, I regret even recruiting you. Go back to Australia.
Yeah. Who
the hell were your high school coaches? They're a bunch of idiots. And it was just every day. And then a lot of C-bombs and all that. And that was what it was. So it was. It's actually nice hearing from you what you said, that he said that after the Minnesota game, because, I mean, it would have been good for him to tell us that every now and then. I know it wasn't in his MO, but you just felt like he hated you at times. And I guess when you're 18, 19 years old, going through adolescence, growing into a man, you're like, how do we handle this? But I guess the funniest thing out of all that was he would motherfuck you and call you every name under the sun, call your parents idiots, your family are losers, they raised you wrong, whatever it was. And then he would step off the court after a session, literally 1 centimeter off that line, put his arm around you and be like, so Bogut, is everything okay? You need anything? How's your family? Are you homesick? Are you settling in okay? And I'm just like, I remember the first time he did it to me, and I'm like, this guy's crazy, man. Like, this guy's certifiable. Like, this is crazy. He lit me up for 2 straight hours, called me every name under the sun, go back to Australia, and then it was like he just switched off, and that was that. And I think he did that with a lot of guys. I think he used to overcompensate the off the court shit just because I think he knew that he was towing the line a lot on the court, right?
Oh, no question. I mean, that's exactly him to a T. Cuss you out, and then one step off the court. Bogut, you want to? Are you hungry? Can I take you somewhere to get something to eat, or can Cody go get you something, or can I do this for you? It was incredible. Oh man, that's really funny.
Yeah, and the media as well were like, he had like, I wouldn't say he had him fooled, because I think he had a good heart deep down inside, but it just didn't come out a lot. But like, the media would just be like, they hear these stories about him saying crazy shit and doing crazy stuff at training, and no one would believe it because they're like, nah, not Rick. Like, he's great with us. He's humorous. He treats us well. He's offering the media donuts and coffee, and they didn't know any better. But to the people behind the scenes like us, we're like, on eggshells most of the time.
He had everyone scared at the U for their lives every single day of what was going to happen, his wrath. The other one was right before Christmas. You remember playing at Colorado?
Yeah, they had Harrison, the big fella. Yep.
Yeah, the big fella Harrison. And
free throw box out.
Yeah, there was the last blockout right before halftime, and Coach came in at halftime and just lost it on you and almost passed out right there. Yeah,
I do. Yeah, he lit into me, and he took 2 or 3 steps back, and I think a few of the coaches caught him, right?
It was me and Scott Garson, that went and just kind of held him up here so he didn't fall over. But yeah, that was another little scary time with Coach Majerus, but he lost it on that blockout too. Harrison end of half, and we ended up beating Colorado pretty good that game too.
At Colorado, yeah, big win. But that was interesting. I guess let's touch on some funnier things. I mean, he used to do so much funny, quirky things, sometimes borderline abusive, borderline not. I mean, I guess the funnier ones for me were the ones always in the film room, because we'd be in the film room, mind you, sometimes for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So you have to think people like yourself and Scott Garson and the coaches would have to prepare so much film, hours and hours and hours, in case he wanted a certain clip. But I mean, he'd be in a big leather chair. We'd all be in hard seats, kind of paying attention, making sure you're not tuning out. And I remember mid-film, he falls asleep, just starts snoring, and everyone's looking at each other like, what do we do to someone who wants to wake him up? And that was your job. And then you got the good, tell us there's a laser pointer story and the whiteboard eraser story. They're the two ones that I remember.
I'll tell the laser pointer one, yeah. So we were sitting there, and we just turned off the lights, and my job was just to make sure, Coach Majerus had a laser pointer that was ready to go, and he could point stuff out and cuss these guys out with, right? So I gave him this laser pointer, and he starts pressing the button, and it wasn't going on the film and on the screen. And Coach Majerus just lights up into me, right? Like, you got one effing job. Make sure I have a laser pointer that works. Why doesn't it work? Look at this thing. And as he's pressing it, it's going right to his chest. So the laser pointer's on. It's just going right to his chest. So all I do is kind of walk over, grab the laser pointer, and I flip it around, and then it works right on the screen. So the laser pointer was working all fine and dandy, but Coach Majerus was pointing it the wrong way. And he didn't say anything. He just kept on going about his business.
Yeah, didn't say sorry. Yeah, and there was a similar one with the whiteboard eraser. He drew up some plays on the whiteboard, and then he's got the pen in one hand, the whiteboard pen, the marker, and then he's got the eraser in the other hand, and then he goes to erase the board, and he's looking for the whiteboard eraser, but it's in his hand, and just lights into you like, Cody, you got one fucking, where is my whiteboard eraser? And you're just like, it's in your hand, coach. Oh, yes. And then just continued on. It's just like,
all he said is, we need more erasers. We need more erasers.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh, thanks, coach. But I mean, they're the kind of things that we, as team and coaches used to just talk about and just absolutely laugh. Do you remember when like the LA boys, was Cheney, Drisdom, and Hawkins, and who else? Markson, they'd always, would be in a huddle at the end of practice after being berated for 2 hours, and one of these dudes would go behind him and start blowing on his hair. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember that. Yeah. I remember that clear as day, because then you just I'm standing on the side that Majerus is looking at, and I'm like ready to piss myself laughing because he's half balding, his hair's flapping up in the air, and Cheney's just blowing. Those guys just didn't care. And you're just like, man, like it was awesome looking back, but in the moment, my ass started tightening up. You're just trying not to even give a murmur of a smile because he's going to then lay into you for the next week. But absolutely hilarious times.
Yeah, that was the best part for me is I always had like a basketball in my hand, so I could always put the basketball in front of my face anytime I was laughing. You guys always had to use your jerseys and lift those up anytime Coach Majerus was doing something.
I guess no one was, the thing with Coach Majerus was his sessions were a thing of beauty for the most part, outside of the getting into guys and swearing and yelling and carrying on sometimes. But he was big on spacing. He was big on breaking things down. A very good teacher of things. At times, probably too harsh on guys, but he knew the game backwards, and you could never argue that. So we used to get a lot of guest coaches would come through that place. We even have NBA coaches sometimes come through, assistant coaches. And I mean, he was friends with George Karl and different Doc Rivers, different NBA coaches would pass through sometimes. But we'd get a lot of high school coaches coming in. So, I mean, you remember this one very, very well. And I remember it too, because it kind of took the spotlight of us as players during training. But there's a bunch of high school coaches in there, and they'd always have their notebooks out and writing down all our plays. And what I remember that one time, but I think he did it a lot of the time. But what would he do to those guys generally?
So it was, if you want to tell this one, it was the Utah High School Association came out for one of our practices, and all the coaches are there jotting it down. It was one of our underneath out of bounds plays. Do you want to tell that story? What he said, or
oh man, he just. But any plays really, he sees all these coaches up in the stands. I mean, how many were there? Probably 50, 40,
oh,
50.
At least there was at least 150 coaches there.
Yeah, so he sees them all with their the standard basketball notebook that's the material of the basketball, and everyone's writing down everything Majerus says, and just for some reason he stops mid explaining this, and he's talking to us, but he's looking at us and saying, you see these coaches up in the stands writing down all my fucking plays. Yeah, they go home and they jack themselves off to my plays. They have no idea about execution. They have no idea about time and score and spacing and what it takes to put these plays together. And these coaches are sitting up there like looking at each other like, why is he going at us for? And that's just what he was. Like, these guys are going home and jacking off to my plays, and they have no idea. They have no idea what they're doing. Just like these were guests welcomed by our university, and just starts railing at them.
These guys have no idea what it takes to win. It's all about defense and rebounding. These guys just care about these stupid plays.
I remember that, and I looked up, and I'm looking in the crowd, and these coaches' heads are on a swivel. They're like too scared to say anything. It was crazy.
Do you remember the time Dr. Hill came in for practice?
Nah, I don't remember that one. Go ahead.
So Dr. Hill, you might have been
his athletic director. Yep.
Yeah, the athletic director, Chris Hill, who's one of the best athletic directors ever, right?
Yep. Dr.
Hill, walks in and sits down to watch one point of the practice, and Coach Majerus just said, "All right, bring it in." And Bogues, you know how it was when Coach Majerus said, "Bring it in." Everyone flew in there, right to listen to what he's got to say. I mean, a dead sprint to get right to as close to Coach Majerus as you could. And he goes, "All right, you guys," and he points up at Dr. Hill. He points up, and he always used his middle finger when he pointed. He points up at Dr. Hill and he goes, "You guys see what happens to bad coaches? They become athletic directors." And it was just out of nowhere for no reason, just brought that out. And then Dr. Hill heard him, kind of just stood up and walked right out, and Coach Majerus just kept on coaching practice.
Yeah, they didn't have the best relationship, I don't think. I think it was there was a bit of back and forth. At least when I was there wasn't a whole lot of good history there. I think Majerus probably always demanding more funding and more this and more that, and I think Dr. Hill had to put him in his place a few times. So they definitely had an interesting relationship.
Yeah, I was in a couple of those meetings. They were not fun meetings to be in.
Yeah, and Majerus was, he was direct to whoever it was, whether he was talking to a 12-year-old kid or a 50-year-old man. He didn't really sugarcoat things, and probably was say things that weren't appropriate. I mean, I don't think he could coach today, in my opinion. I think he could coach X's and O's wise and basketball wise and IQ wise. I think he's got no issue. I think with the way the world's going, with kind of how he condoned himself, I think he'd really struggle with social media, someone recording a session, that stuff getting out. But you could argue that's a shame with the way society's going. But at the same time, I think there were times he went over the line. But getting on from that, I guess a big kind of turning point for me during that season was the UConn game. You obviously remember that one very, very well because you've brought it up numerous times, and it brings another funny Majerus story along with it. But I remember we go to the NIT because we beat Minnesota, so that we go to the semifinals and play against Texas Tech, Bobby Knight. And we didn't play that well, but we went down to them by 10 or 11, but we didn't play that well. And I didn't have a great game. I wasn't horrible, but then get to UConn, they ended up losing, so we play them in the 3-4. And it was my first exposure to a big time school, a big major school. They're all McDonald's high school Americans. They had a lot of great players. I think Ben Gordon, Mecca Okafor, Josh Moon. And Mecca Okafor was the first time I'd seen him and just absolutely kicked my ass. I mean, they ran the same misdirection cross screen play, 6 straight times on me, and dunk, 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 dunk. I just couldn't figure this play out because it was just, they had counters to it, and then I tried to cheat at one play and it was a lob dunk, and then I went under, and then he comes over the top and dunks on me, then I go over and he goes under and dunks on me, and I was just like, what the hell is going on? And I guess we would have went over it in film, and I don't know, I just couldn't figure that one out. And that was kind of a bit of a turning point for me of a wake-up call of, I thought I was the man at that point, and I was doing pretty well for a freshman. And like you said, had 17 or 18 and 18 against Minnesota, and that was a welcome to big college basketball. But then Majerus, I'll let you explain it because you tell a great story with it. But he was that next week was Bogut week.
Oh, it was relentless on you right after that. But yeah, we lost to Texas Tech, and then we had Thanksgiving that day. Remember? And we practiced 3 times on Thanksgiving, right? And then we all show up to the team dinners that day, and we're the only team that has sweats, and everybody else is dressed nice. And Thanksgiving, and all of us are just dead and done and tired. And then the next day, we play UConn. Like you said, they got us. They dunked it over and over again, and the next week at practice, and I just remember Coach Majerus was just relentless on you. What did he say? Hey, Bogut, what do you think about this? And then just acted like he was dunking on you like 10 different times, like dunk, 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 dunk. What do you think about Okafor, Bogut? Dunk, 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 dunk.
Yeah, he actually said, do you remember his balls on your head? I'm just like, man, because whenever I'd make a mistake at training or practice, I'd miss something or drop my head. Hey, Bogut, you okay? You remember this? Boom, 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 boom. That's Okafor dunking on you. I'm just like, what the And it was like the next day and the next day. So I was just like, we need to hurry up and just play this next game. I think the next game was against Stony Brook, wasn't it? Where he sent you on the, didn't you have to go on a 10-hour round trip or something to get some film or something of them?
Yeah, so Stony Brook, that was actually the game right when we got there first. We played them first when we got to New York. Yeah. But as soon as we got to, we flew into New York. I had to drive 7 hours to give this team back their film. So we landed at like 1 a.m. and Coach Majerus had one of the walk-ons go with me, Brett Sortle. So I drove 7 hours to return this film, and then I drove 7 hours back. So it was like a 14-hour trip, and then I got back just in time for the Stony Brook game. But that's the kind of stuff you do in my fun profession at that time. Now everything's digital and easier, but that was a videotape that I needed to return. I drank a lot of soda.
A lot of soda, yeah. Typical American, right? The big gulps.
Yeah.
A few other ones. You got the Britton Johnson story. That's a pretty funny one.
Yeah. So were you there at that time?
Nah, Britton was the year before me. I heard a lot about him, but obviously a Mormon kid, very religious, right? But he was gone. He had left after I'd got there.
Yeah, he was drafted by the Magic or made the Magic team for that first 1 or 2 years. And I mean, heck of a player. He was an All-American, could have gone anywhere in the country and chose to come to Utah, play for Coach Majerus, and like an unbelievable player, right? He was player of the year in the WAC when Utah was in the WAC, and just an unbelievable dominant player. Really good, really athletic. Made a ton of money playing basketball. And Coach Majerus, after Britton's career was over, I mean, after his career was over at Utah and he was with the Magic, and, Coach Majerus is like, you know what? This Britton Johnson, and he's talking to your team, Bogues, right? He goes, Britton Johnson, guys, he would have been a heck of a player, would have been a much better player if he would have done a little bit of less of this, talking about praying, and done a lot more of this. He was talking about shooting. If he would have done a little bit less more. Yeah, and a lot more shooting. He would have been a way better player and just crushed a kid that did nothing but, work his butt off for Coach Majerus. So that was always a fun story. And I talk to Britton Johnson still now to this day, and I tell him that every couple times I see him. So it's a fun one.
I guess the end of this is Majerus' last coach game. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. We were playing at Air Force.
At Air Force. He went after me again that game, I think.
Oh, yeah.
At halftime. And it was an interesting time. I mean, I don't know how much of the details you know now, but the way I saw it, he coached that game. I think we lost that game, right?
Yeah, we lost that game.
For the first time, had a big that could shoot, so it kind of completely changed the way we guarded them, because we usually had success against them, but the big brought the big out, and then they were just getting back cuts and getting whatever they wanted. And it was my first experience in playing one of those small schools that just are methodical and just run the same thing for the whole shot clock. So I struggled in that game, but I remember getting back to Utah. We had a week off to our big rivalry game with BYU, where you're at now, and that was on the Saturday. And then I think Monday morning they pull all of us out of class at like 8:30 a.m., 9 a.m., and they bring us in, and they basically tell us that Coach Majerus had a heart attack and that he was gone, right? So it was, I mean, we didn't know any better, and who were we to question that at that point? And we literally never saw him again. That was kind of the disappointing thing for at least me and a lot of the guys on the team was, I remember one of the guys on the team asked, well, can we go see him in hospital? And we were told no, he's gotten on a plane and flown. Where did he fly? Was it Wisconsin? He flew somewhere.
He flew to Cali, like Santa Barbara, I think.
Yeah. So then I guess the next question was, well, if he had a heart attack, why did he get on a plane? So there was a couple of guys that were kind of like, oh, what's really going on here? And I'm not sure what the exact details were, but from what I've heard, we played Weber State a month before. Lance Allred, I don't know if you remember him, but he's the first, I guess, deaf player to play in the NBA. He used to wear hearing devices. I mean, fantastic story. I know he's got his own book, so I've told people to go read that because it's just a great story. But he was at the University of Utah, and I guess he left because Majerus was on him too much and said some very inappropriate things. From what I understand, he then transfers to Weber State. We play them in a local rivalry game leading up to conference, and the Salt Lake Tribune, I'm not sure if you remember, the Salt Lake Tribune does a full page spread on Lance Allred, and he basically spills the beans, right, on everything that he thinks Rick did to him. And I guess they'd investigated it back when Lance transferred a couple of years before and found Majerus, everything was okay. We don't have enough evidence. But I think the Tribune article rehashed some old wounds, and the school, from what I understood, was putting together an investigation again. And this is my understanding, I could be wrong, but basically went and told Coach Majerus, we're investigating you, and the NCAA's told us to. And he basically said, if you launch this investigation, I'm going tomorrow. I mean, I'm not sure if there's, if that's correct, but that's kind of what I got looking into it years later.
Yep, I kind of heard a lot of the same things on my end for Coach Majerus, that there was a lot happening through the university, and he ended up just flying to Santa Barbara and getting out of there. And I think the next time we spoke to him as a team was right at the Mountain West Conference tournament, if you remember that.
Or was it before that tournament, or before the NCAA tournament?
I thought it was in the Mountain West Conference tournament. I think it was right before our first game.
It might have been, yeah. I could be wrong, yeah. It was a conference call in that conference room where our basketball ops guy kind of organized it and didn't tell anyone. And I remember Kerry Rupp wasn't too happy about it, who was then the coach. But I guess it was disappointing the way it ended, and we never really got a formal goodbye. And I know there was a lot of guys that were emotional. A lot of guys, myself included, came to that school not because it was the University of Utah, but came to that school because it was Coach Rick Majerus, So, that was kind of disappointing, but that was just one of the things we had to deal with. And then we ended up bouncing back, and we ended up winning the Mountain West Conference tournament, get an automatic bid, go to the first round of the tournament, lose to a pretty good Boston College team at the time, but it kind of set the scene for
for the next season. We had a lot of young guys, a lot of freshmen and sophomore in that group. So I think it worked out pretty well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that was the first time you played in the Bucks gym right there, that Boston College game.
The Bradley Center, yeah. Yep, the Bradley Center. And it's funny how it all goes full circle. But look, I guess we'll finish just on Majerus. I guess, like I said, Majerus coach players and staff, I think we all have a lifetime bond. And it's kind of, I don't know Keith Van Horn at all, never really met him, played against him once or twice, but he went through this phase on Twitter where he was posting kind of Rick Majerus isms, where he'd just put random stories, kind of like the one that you said, pray less, shoot more, that kind of funny stuff. And it kind of, you have an automatic bond with someone like that because you all have the same stories. And I guess whenever we catch up, whether it's today or in 20 years, no matter what we catch up for, Majerus stories will come up.
For sure. And that's one thing that's pretty cool that, I'm in Utah still. And so I get to see a lot of Utah people, and we're just telling stories and we even have a strength coach right now that worked for him at St. Louis. So I get to hear a lot of St. Louis stories too. So it's pretty neat that all the kind of guys that were under Majerus' kind of umbrella all have great stories. And like you said, kind of our brothers for life deal that we all get to kind of share things and hear and stick together because we all did it together.
Oh, that's it. But all right, that wraps up part one of the Q&A with Cody. Thanks for joining us, Cody.
Of course. Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. So awesome to talk to you, Bogues. And this podcast has been awesome, man. I love listening to it, and I know this thing's going to be huge as you keep on going through it.
Thanks, mate. Thanks again to Cody Fueger from the BYU men's basketball program for coming on and giving a bit of color about my freshman year. Some great Majerus stories in there. Cody will join us again for the My Journey sophomore episode. But moving on from that, my freshman year ends. I finished class in April, May area, fly back home to Australia for national team camp. So I get an invite to the Australian Boomers men's national team in 2004, preparing for the Athens Olympics in August. So a huge honor to be a part of even just the camp. So that was kind of the next step I had. But leaving the University of Utah, I didn't know if I'd be back. I didn't know if I'd, after the year I had with Rick Majerus and the ups and the downs and the turmoil and the abuse and all that kind of stuff, I honestly was considering leaving. What did leaving mean? Look, I was projected to be a late first round pick, early second round pick in the NBA draft. I had numerous European offers on the table, and it was one of those things where it was a crossroad. Do I come back? I knew we were in the hunt for a new coach, which I thought was going to be Kerry Rupp, which was the head assistant, and I liked him. He recruited me, and that would have been a big positive to get me back quickly. But then we obviously went and hired a new coach during that off season. So there was a crossroad. I kind of didn't know if I'm going to now be told what I want to hear and be sold a used car and then get there and it's the same old story of being, in a situation that's just hard every day. And that was something I had to think through. So we'll get to that further down the track, but that wraps up the Rogue Bogues My Journey, episode 4, University of Utah freshman year. A lot of fun stuff in there, a lot of great Majerus stories. Look, the Majerus stories probably need to be a separate podcast on their own because some of them go on for days and there's a lot of good, quirky, funny, brutal, harsh stuff in there. We got through as much as we could, myself and Cody. Hope you enjoyed those. I know we'll get a lot of listeners tuning in from Salt Lake City, Utah, so I've always appreciated all your support from that end of the world. Remember, Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever it may be. Tell a friend, tell your auntie, tell someone you hate. It's a great podcast. So tune in next time. Thank you.